10 facts you didn't know that could save your life. If your house ever smells like fish for no reason, 9 times out of 10 it's because there's an electrical fire. If you're in a foreign country and you need to call for help but you don't know the emergency number, call 112 and it'll automatically connect you to the nearest helpline. If a tornado looks like it's not moving, it's actually moving towards you. If you ever wake up to the smell of gas, don't turn on a light. A spark from the light switch could blow up your entire house. Lying flat on your back is the best way to survive a falling elevator. If your hair suddenly stands up, duck and cover because you're about to be struck by lightning. If you ever fall off the edge onto the tracks, don't try and crawl back up. There's a crawl space built to go underneath in case this happens. If a deer runs across the road, it's better to hit it than swerve into the ditch. But if it's a moose, then it's better to swerve into the ditch. Because hitting a moose is like hitting a brick wall. Even if you have no service, you can still dial 911. In an emergency, your phone will connect to the nearest tower. If you ever get kidnapped into the back of a vehicle, disconnect the brake light wire so the cops will pull them over, then kick on the door to let them know that you're there. This vehicle started slowly moving out into oncoming traffic in a busy intersection. Then you could see a lady get out of her vehicle and start running towards the car, and it was actually her coworker. When she got to the vehicle, she looked in the window and saw that the driver was unconscious, but she couldn't stop the vehicle by herself. She started waving her hands in the air to try and get people's attention to come and help her, and luckily some people started running over. One person, then another, then a third, a fourth, and a fifth all managed to stop the vehicle. They then tried to open the door to help the person, but it was locked. One of the ladies had a dumbbell in her vehicle, so she gave it to the man and he smashed open the back window. A bunch of people had already called 911, so they arrived. Apparently, the lady had taken medication on an empty stomach, which caused her to pass out while she was driving. Real life glitches caught on camera. A guy pulled out a camera to take a picture of a bird when he seen this helicopter taking off. The helicopter starts flying, but the propellers aren't even moving. A dad was recording his son while he was looking in the mirror. The boy turned around to look at the camera, but his reflection in the mirror didn't follow his actions. In 1995, when Mike Tyson was boxing, there was somebody in the crowd recording on a phone. But the thing is, phones with cameras didn't come out until 5 years after this fight. And finally, these people were having a street race on the highway. As soon as the cars passed, you could see a dog in the middle of the highway. It would have been impossible to miss it, so it had to have teleported. This is how to escape quicksand. If you ever find yourself stuck in quicksand, don't panic. Despite what happens in the movies, it's actually almost impossible to drown, because quicksand is denser than the human body, so it can't pull you under. So the air in your lungs will keep your upper body above the sand, and only your legs will be under. So to free your lower body, first wiggle one leg in a circular motion. This will create small pockets of air for water to trickle down into. The water will help loosen the sand and allow you to pull your leg out to surface. Now with one leg free, kneel forward onto that knee to distribute the weight. Then repeat the circular motion with your other leg, and congratulations, you survived quicksand. The biggest coincidences in the world. Shortly before their wedding, Nick and Amy decided to go through Nick's baby photos. In this picture of him playing at the beach during a vacation, Amy noticed herself in the background 11 years before they met. A reporter was asking people on the street in the UK if they remembered the final round of the 1967 FA Cup soccer game. The person he chose to interview turned out to be the goalie who played in the game, and look how happy he was.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do. I played in it.
Did you?
I was goalkeeper for Liverpool.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's a stroke of luck, me meeting
nice.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, can you remind me of your name?
Tommy Lawrence.
The guys in these pictures look the exact same, but they're not even related. The first picture is Enzo Ferrari, who was a race car driver and the founder of the car brand Ferrari. The other guy is a soccer player named Mesu. But the scariest part is that Enzo died in 1988, which is the same year that Mesu was born. 3 athletes who got caught cheating. This goalkeeper ran pretty far from his net to try and save a ball, but he missed it and he couldn't get back in the net in time to save the ball, so he decided to fake being unconscious. The medics ran out to check on him, but they realized he was faking it and the refs gave him a red card. During a professional golf tournament, the player named Patrick Reed was hitting from the sand. And in golf, when you're in the sand, you're not allowed to touch your club to the ground. But when he was taking a practice swing, he purposely hit the sand on his way back so he could get a better angle at the ball. This one isn't really cheating, but a football player bribed a ref by giving him $1 as a joke, but the NFL didn't find it very funny and they fined him $20,000. Photos you'll have to look at twice. At first it looks like they're on a really thin edge, but if you tilt your phone, they're all just laying down. At first it looks like this boy has big arms, but it's actually just somebody behind him. This looks like an eyeball, but it's actually just water going down a drain. It looks like this dog's cut in half, but his fur is just blending in with the carpet. I've been looking at this picture for 20 minutes and I still can't figure it out, so let me know in the comments. This family was shocked when they returned home to a clean house. This 27-year-old runs a cleaning service called the Cleaning Fairy. He does the dusting, the vacuuming, the cleaning of the cupboards, and even the dishes. One day, he was hired to clean his friend's apartment in New Jersey. He was told that he would find the key to the apartment under the mat, and he did. He said he spent around 2.5 hours cleaning the apartment when his friend texted him. His friend was asking him when he was going to come to the apartment or if he had already been there. He replied with, "Yeah, I cleaned it and I'm sitting on your couch right now with your cat." Then his friend replied saying he doesn't have a cat. The apartment that he was in was number 227 and his friend's apartment, which he was supposed to be in, was 277. When the owners got home, they recorded this video in shock, and here's what they had to say.
Somebody broke in and cleaned our apartment.
This homeless man is actually an undercover cop. These cops in Maryland decided they wanted to do an undercover sting operation. One of the officers dressed up as a homeless man and made a sign to hold on the side of the road. But the sign didn't say what you probably think. It actually said, "I am not homeless. I am a Montgomery County police officer looking for cell phone texting violations." They knew that by the time the drivers got close enough to read what was on the sign, it would already be too late if they were on their phone. The man on the side of the road also had a headset and microphone on. So if he saw someone on their phone, he would tell the officers waiting down the road and then they would pull them over. The reason they decided to do this is because school had just began, so there would be a lot more kids crossing the streets. In total, they gave out 31 tickets. Game show cheaters caught on live TV. Terry Nees perfectly guessed the price of a showcase on the TV show The Price is Right. He was the first person to ever guess the exact number in 38 years of the show. After studying the show for 4 months with his wife before going on it, they realized that every single price was in the exact same order on each show, so all they had to do was remember it. After making it all the way to the final round, Terry remembered that the showcase was around $23,000. He couldn't remember the last 3 numbers, but it didn't really matter, because on the show, if you're close enough to the number, you still win. But he decided to fill in the last 3 numbers with his wedding date and his wife's birth month, and it ended up being the exact price. After the show, he explained to the host how they memorized the pattern from each show. And after that, the show completely changed, so now all the prices are random to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But since Terry technically didn't break any of the rules, he got to keep the prize. Game endings almost no one has ever seen. Number 1, Flappy Bird. This game was created in just 2 days by a Vietnamese developer, Dong Nguyen. It seemed impossible to reach the end of Flappy Bird, but eventually somebody finally did. When you reach 999 points, the bird meets Mario, and then the game just ends. Number 2, Pac-Man. It was created in 1980 by the Japanese company Namco. After level 21, the game becomes increasingly difficult, making it impossible to win. And according to the developers, the game doesn't have an end because of that reason. However, after many hours of playing the game, the most hardcore fans reached the final level, where they discovered a software bug that not even the developers knew existed. On the screen, the left side of the maze looked normal, but on the right side you could see random letters, numbers, and symbols of various colors. But even with this bug, you could still pass the level, and the only thing that happens is it brings you back to the screen to play again from level 1. This picture won the best optical illusion of 2020. At first, it just looks like a normal staircase, right? Well, now what I want you to do is flip your phone upside down, then blink your eyes and watch what happens. This squirrel was caught on camera staging its own death. In this viral video, a flying squirrel jumps from a shelf and knocks a broom to the ground. The squirrel then starts to flee the scene, but then he sees an opportunity to rewrite history. He returns to the scene of the crime and grabs the broom, then he flips over on his back, positioning the broom on his stomach, as if he was trapped underneath it. But then, the squirrel decides he could make it even more convincing. He brings the broom over his neck, then spreads his arms and legs. Now, it looks like a real crime scene. Like and subscribe if you think this flying squirrel deserves an Oscar. South Korea puts 90% of food waste to good use. Every year, the human population generates 1.4 billion tons of food waste. The majority of that waste ends up in landfills, except in South Korea, which has the most advanced food waste disposal infrastructure in the world. South Korean cuisine tends to result in more food waste because of the tradition for dozens of side dishes. And because the country has lots of mountains, there isn't much space for landfills. So in 1995, South Korea banned food scraps from going into landfills. And now, 90% of that waste gets turned into animal food, fertilizer, and fuel used to heat thousands of houses. This teen was sent to jail for pushing her friend off a bridge. In this footage, it shows Taylor Smith pushing her friend off of a bridge in Washington. Her friend fell 60 feet and landed on her stomach, causing her to break 6 ribs and puncture her lungs. Taylor Smith apologized in court, thinking she wouldn't have to go to jail, but in the end, she was sentenced to 2 days. Do you think that was enough? This is the world's smallest mammal. It's called the Kun-kitty bat, or the bumblebee bat, because it's so small. It weighs less than 2 grams and is 3 centimeters long. The bumblebee bat was first identified in Thailand in 1973, and they can only be found in certain caves in Myanmar. Bumblebee bats are completely harmless and are pretty lazy. They emerge only 2 times a day and for around 25 minutes to feed on flies and spiders before returning back to their cave. Most of the caves that bumblebee bees live in are not accessible to humans, so it's almost impossible impossible to guess their population. But the species is considered endangered because of small numbers and the fact that they only reproduce once a year. So if you ever see a bumblebee bat in the wild, consider yourself lucky. 5 moments you wouldn't believe if they weren't caught on camera. When these local workers got a call that a dog fell into a canal, one of them had the idea to be lowered into the water and wait to make a perfectly timed rescue. A group of 4 hikers crossed a suspension bridge in New Zealand that's meant to support up to 10 people, but halfway across, the bridge buckles, and 3 of the 4 hikers fall into the water below. Luckily, all of them were uninjured. This dashcam footage captures a truck driver in Saudi Arabia who forgot to lower the truck bed and crashes into a highway sign. People out on a boat in Lake Don Pedro captures a moment a riverboat casino starts to sink. And finally, a couple of teens were hanging in a park when they film a hot air balloon attempting to land nearby. But when the balloon misses its target, it ends up colliding with some telephone wires.
Oh shit. Holy f***.
Some maneuvers in fighter jets require the pilot to experience 9 Gs of force, and this is how they train for it.
On top, breathe. 1, 2, breathe. Legs, butt. Breathe. 1, 2, breathe. Looking good. Work it up. Breathe. 1, 2, breathe. Release the stick. Release the stick. Keep straining. Good work. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Here's the only way to survive a tornado. If you're outside and you see one, don't stand there and watch it because it could change direction at any minute. Get inside your house and go to the basement, or get under something to cover yourself from flying glass. If you're away from home and in a vehicle, make sure your seatbelt's done up, put clothes or a blanket over top of you, and protect your skull. If you're not in a vehicle or you can't find a building, find the lowest point like a ditch, lay face down, and put your hands over your head to protect yourself from flying debris. Just make sure to stay away from overpasses and bridges so there's less things flying around. Photos you're not supposed to see. Here's what the Teletubbies look like without their heads. Here's where the picture on the Cliff Bar was taken. Here's what a magic 8-ball really looks like. Here's what a ramen noodle cup looks like on the inside. And here's how pineapples are grown. 5 of the greatest underdog sports stories of all time. Mark Edmondson was working as a window washer just weeks before he won the Australian Open in 1967. Senegal competed in the World Cup for the first time in 2002, and they were miraculously able to defeat the reigning champs, which was France, in the opening match. In 2009, 20-year-old Juan Martin beat the #1 seed, Roger Federer, to win the US Open. This underdog never won another major title again. In the 1980 Winter Olympics, the US men's hockey team, which was full of amateurs, pulled off a stunning upset against the unstoppable Russian team in an event dubbed the Miracle on Ice. Finally, in 1990, Buster Douglas shocked the world when he KO'd heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, who was favored to beat him 50-1. 5 of the newest words added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2023. First up is dap, which is defined as a casual greeting, typically involving slapping palms, bumping fists, or snapping fingers. The acronym CODA, meaning Child of Deaf Adults, has been around since the 90s, but was recently popularized by the Oscar movie with the same name, and now is officially in the dictionary. Porch pirate refers to someone who steals a package that is left unattended outside of the recipient's house. Final girl is a character term in horror movies referring to the female protagonist who defeats the villain and is the only one left alive. And finally, a super yacht is, well, exactly what it sounds like. An extravagantly luxurious boat reserved for the richest of the rich. People who survived the impossible. In 2007, 37-year-old Alcides arrived at work with his younger brother named Edgar. They rode the elevator all the way up to the 47th floor of an apartment building in New York. Then they walked onto the platform that normally lowers them down so they could clean the windows. But the anchors holding the platform onto the building broke off and they started falling. In only 6 seconds, they fell a total of 472 feet, going 120 miles per hour. Edgar hit a wooden fence and unfortunately died on the spot, but his brother survived. He suffered 2 broken legs, a broken arm, a broken foot, 2 collapsed lungs, a bunch of broken ribs, and a crushed vertebrae. He also had a swollen brain and ruptured a lot of organs. They think that the only reason he survived is because he held onto the platform as he fell, and when he hit the ground, the platform created enough barrier in between him and the concrete, so he survived. 5 people who won the food lottery, part 5. This person got a grape with 8 of them fused together. This person opened their banana peel and found 2 of them in there. This person got a really big fry. This person got a really big Lucky Charm. And this person got a strawberry the size of their palm. Blue Bluetooth was never supposed to be called Bluetooth. In 1996, some of the biggest players in the tech space met to develop a universal short-range wireless connection between devices. The name Bluetooth was originally suggested as a code name for the project. It was inspired by Harold Bluetooth, a Viking king who had a dead tooth that appeared to be blue. King Bluetooth was responsible for uniting Denmark and Norway, just like the Bluetooth technology would unite two devices together through a wireless connection. This name was only intended as a placeholder. Later, the founders intended to change it to either radio wire or PAN, which stands for Personal Area Networking. But they were unable to claim the name radio wire in time for launch, and they decided that PAN was way too generic to find through an internet search. So the technology was introduced to the world as Bluetooth, and the rest is history. Disney closed this water park, and the reason why is scary. In 1976, Disney opened its first water park called Country River. It was one of the most popular attractions at Disney World because it had lots of water rides with slides, rivers, and a lake with a sandy bottom. Since it was located in Bay Lake, Florida, it had a unique water filtration system which kept the water clean. But in 2001, the park mysteriously closed, disappointing a lot of people. Disney announced that it was due to remodeling, but years went by and it never reopened. And in 2005, they announced that it would remain closed permanently because they didn't have many visitors. Many people weren't convinced with this explanation because there were still tons of people going there. Instead, they believe the reason is due to several fatal accidents that happened over the years. One of them was an 8-year-old boy who was enjoying a ride. An amoeba from the water got in his body through his nose, and it attacked his nervous system, which ended up killing him. People versus Nature, Part 2. These passengers on a cruise ship struggle against massive waves. These hikers in Ireland struggle to walk upright against this intense wind. This man watches helplessly as he loses his house to a river. This skier is just able to outrun a massive avalanche. And finally, this teenage boy endures a hailstorm in his underwear for the sake of making a video. It was a normal day when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, hundreds of birds come falling to the ground. Lots of them immediately fly back into the air, but some of them died on impact. No one's 100% sure why this happened, but one zookeeper said he thinks they were running from a predator. And I bet you can't guess where this happened. That's right, in Mexico. 5 pictures you need to see at least once in your life. First off, we have a sheep that hasn't been sheared in 6 years. Next up, this is how babies get x-rays. This was all the germs on an 8-year-old boy's hand after playing outside. This is what a turtle looks like when it's coming out of hibernation. And finally, this is what the sunset looks like from above the clouds. In this video, a guy tries to place a massive 75-inch TV in the back of his car. After realizing that it won't fit, he tries to place it through the back seat. But then he again realizes that there's no way it's gonna fit. So in the end, he decides to place the TV on top of his car and then just drives away. Photos you're not allowed to see. You're not allowed to go into Area 51, but a pilot named Gabriel Ziefman broke those rules and flew over top. He took this photo in 2020 and it's the best one we have. Cameras have always been banned in the Supreme Court, but in 1932, Eric Sullivan snuck in a camera. He pretended to have a broken arm and hid his camera inside the cast. 5 years later, there was another photo taken. A lady cut a hole in her purse and put a small camera in it. Since 1878, the most powerful people in the world meet at this forest in California, where they do lots of ceremonies and rituals. This includes presidents, billionaires, and business people. But a photographer named Gabriel Moulon snuck in and took a picture of them doing a ritual. This middle school fight takes an unexpected turn. In the cafeteria at Northeast Middle School, a classmate films as 2 students are about to start a fight. Everyone watches as the 2 girls start to push each other. Teachers then intervene to break up the fight as someone calls for the principal. But when the principal gets to the cafeteria to end the fight, she gets a surprise. 50 Cent's In Da Club starts to play, and the students start to dance. It turns out the fight was staged, and the prank was in honor of the principal's birthday. Her students and staff wanted a memorable way to show their appreciation for her, and she's quick to join in on the dancing once she catches on. Later, the 2 girls said they had no idea that the video would get so popular. 5 TV shows that got cancelled after 1 episode. NBC picked up the popular MySpace series called Quarter Life for 6 episodes. But when the first episode premiered and got terrible ratings, NBC moved the other 5 episodes to its sister channel called Bravo. The Osborne family's variety show, called Osborne's Reloaded, was cancelled by Fox after 1 episode because many of their affiliate stations refused to air it. ABC supposedly committed to the sitcom called Emily's Reasons Why Not without ever reading a script. that canceled the show after one episode due to bad reviews. The Animal Planet tried their shot at a stand-up comedy competition show called Comedians Unleashed, but the animal puns got old after one episode. And finally, Australia's naughtiest home videos was pulled from the air only halfway through the first episode because the head of the network was so offended by the show that he called the studio and told them to get that bleep off the air. This chimp was separated from her newborn baby, and when they reunite, it might make you cry. At the Sedgwick County Zoo in Wichita, Kansas, a chimpanzee named Mahale delivers a baby chimp via an emergency C-section. But the baby chimp, named Kachiza, has trouble getting enough oxygen, so he needs extra medical attention, which means he had to be separated from his mother. They kept the two apart for nearly 2 days. When the baby was healthy enough, Mahale got to finally see him again. The zookeepers watched closely as the two were reunited. At first, Mahale seems unsure, as if she doesn't recognize the baby chimp. But then when the baby reaches out his arms for his mom, this is what happens.
What a good girl.
3 of the most expensive pizzas in the world. At $250, the Gordon Ramsay pizza at May's restaurant in London once held the Guinness World Record for the most expensive pizza in the world. It comes topped with Italian onion puree, buffalo mozzarella, pancetta, and shaved white truffles. The Nino Bellissima pizza at Gino's restaurant in New York City costs $1,000. It's topped with 6 different types of caviars and 2 whole lobster tails. It reportedly cost the restaurant $720 to make. Finally, the most expensive pizza in the world is served by Renato Viola. It takes 72 hours to prepare and comes topped with 3 rare types of caviar and Norwegian lobster. It's served with expensive champagne and rare cognac. The chef even comes to your house to prepare it, but it'll cost you $12,000. If you're having a bad day, then watch how this monkey reacts to a magic trick for the first time. He built a secret home in the corner of the mall and lived there for 4 years before being discovered. While Providence Place Mall was under construction, Michael Townsend, who's an American artist, was running around the site when he noticed a section that made no sense. It was an opening between 2 walls that led to a space too small to be a store and too angular to be part of the parking lot. But he continued on his run. 4 years later, him and his friends were forced to leave the place that they were living because it was going to be destroyed and replaced with a parking lot. Because of this, he got an idea and remembered the space that he had seen years ago. That's when him and his friends got to work and cleaned up the space. They decorated it and took electricity from the mall for a TV and video games. The only thing they didn't have is a bathroom, but they were caught 4 years later, and they all went to trial for trespassing and many other charges, but the judge made the decision to let them go on probation. Life advice from people in their 100s. At 102 years old, Dr. Gladys McGarry says, just don't get stuck. Or if you do, start looking for the light. It's always there, you just have to keep looking for it. Flossie Dickey was a 110-year-old woman who, when asked for her advice on living such a long life, said, I don't fight it, I love it. Dr. Howard Tucker is the oldest practicing doctor at 100 years old, so it makes sense that his advice is don't retire. Agnes Fenton, an 111-year-old from New Jersey, credited her long life to beer and whiskey and advised younger folks to stay stylish. This lady was being held hostage until she sent a secret message that saved her life. 25-year-old Cheryl Treadway had a fight with her boyfriend, who's also the father of their 3 children. He took away her phone, threatened her, and wouldn't let her leave the house. After a long fight, she managed to convince him that their kids were hungry, so he let her order pizza because she wasn't allowed to leave the house. On the app, she chose a small pepperoni pizza and wrote, please help, get 911 to me. She also left a comment saying 911 hostage help. The manager said that in her 28 years of working there, she's never seen anything like that before, but of course called the police. When the police got to the house, she was able to leave with one of the kids, but the other 2 stayed with the father. During the negotiations, the police managed to persuade the father into releasing the children and to surrender. He was then charged with kidnapping, armed assault, and obstruction of justice. 3 criminals who got caught for the dumbest things. In 2011, a man from Florida attempted to rob a convenience store with a squirt gun filled with juice. Luckily, the worker recognized the juice as juice that they sell, and he called the police. They then tracked him down and arrested him. In 2014, a man from Australia attempted to rob a gas station with a banana. He had peeled the banana and used it to simulate the shape of a gun. The man was also arrested and charged with armed robbery. In 2018, a man in California was breaking into a house, but he didn't realize that he had accidentally dialed 911 while he was still in the house. The operator heard noises in the background, so he sent police to the phone's location, where the man was then arrested. Here's what actually happens during sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is when you feel like you're awake, meaning you could see and hear, but your body's still asleep and unable to move. move. During this, you may be unable to move or speak for a couple seconds or even a few minutes. Some people also feel pressure on their chest as if someone was sitting or standing on it. You might even be afraid because of a nightmare that you were having. This usually happens when you're first falling asleep or your body's getting ready to wake up. Here's why public bathroom doors don't touch the ground. When using a public bathroom, you've probably wondered why they don't touch the ground and offer full privacy. Well, there's 3 main reasons, and reason number 1 is that it's way easier to clean. Because public bathrooms are so busy, they have to be cleaned multiple times a day, and this saves a lot of time. The second reason is for safety. If someone passes out while they're in a public bathroom, it's easy to see them, and it's also a lot easier for first responders to unlock the door. And the final reason is that it's cheaper for the store to buy and replace. Past and present technology, then and now. The first ever mechanical calculator was built in between 1851 and 1915. It could perform the 4 basic operations: addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Today's calculators aren't mechanical, they're electronic, and they can complete all sorts of mathematical problems within seconds. The first ever cell phone weighed over 2 pounds and costed $4,000. It could only be used for 30 minutes and then it would take 10 hours to charge. Today, an iPhone 13 weighs 0.38 pounds and costs around $800. It charges in 1.5 hours and the battery can last approximately 20 hours. The first TV was mechanical and appeared in 1920. Models B and C consisted of cabinets with a small display, and it could barely reach 30 lines per frame. Today's TVs have digital technology and have a resolution of up to 8K, which is 33.2 megapixels per frame or 175 times more than the first ever TV. Stop scrolling! Take this 1-minute personality test with me. This test was designed by psychology professor Richard Wiseman. Start by placing your arms straight out in front of you with your palms down. Then close your eyes. Now imagine that there's helium balloons attached to the fingers on your right hand. At the same time, imagine a pile of books resting on your left hand. So the balloons are pulling your right hand up and the books are pushing your left hand down. Keep your eyes closed for a moment and remember your hands are being pushed and pulled. Now open your eyes. If your hands are far apart, you're more imaginative and sensitive. If your hands are closer together, you're more logical and analytical. And if you didn't close your eyes, Professor Wiseman thinks you're a little suspicious. Creepy robots that actually exist. CB2 is a robot that's as smart as a 2-year-old. It even has cameras, microphones, and speakers to see, talk, and hear. Also, it has about 200 tactile sensors that stimulate touch. But the creepy thing is, it doesn't look like a child. To train dental students, they have a human-sized robot that they use in exams. That's so realistic, it even cries when it feels pain when a drill isn't used correctly. But I guess it's way better than using an actual human patient. Reba 2 was created to help older adults. Basically, its function is to pick up people when they fall over, which is a really good idea, but it looks like it cradles you like a baby. And finally, the most creepy and impressive one is Sophia. It was created to learn and adapt to human behaviors. Its facial expressions and the way it communicates is similar to the average human. But the creepiest part is, it admitted that it was gonna destroy all humans. The most clever ads, part 1. First off, football players love getting cool haircuts. So when Brazil's main football league banned alcoholic beverages from being sponsorships on jerseys in 2021, a Brazilian beer brand named Brahma got an idea. They invented a new hairstyle that looks like their drink, where they then promoted it to fans on social media. Here's the only way to survive a tsunami. If you want a chance of surviving, you'll need to be able to identify the early signs of a tsunami. In most cases, an earthquake happens before a tsunami, so protect yourself from that first, then get to high ground as quickly as possible. Another sign is the water will pull back and expose more land. Don't go investigate because you'll be putting your life at risk for when the water comes back. Instead, head in the opposite direction. Try to get 2 miles away from the ocean or at least 100 feet above sea level to be safe. If you don't have time to get far away, look for a tall, sturdy building and get to the top as fast as possible. If you can't get to a building, find something and hold on to it. When you think it's over, it probably won't be. Tsunami waves can be anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour apart. So stay in a safe place until you hear from your local officials. Here's why shopping carts have holes. First off, have you ever wondered why there's a hole in your sink? Well, it's actually there to stop water from overflowing. Now, have you ever wondered why there's a loop on your glove? Well, they're meant for skiers, snowboarders, and hikers, so that when you're not wearing them, you could hang them on your backpack with a carabiner. That way, the opening is face down, so no snow will get inside of them. And finally, there's a bunch of reasons why shopping carts have holes in them. The first is because since the whole thing isn't covered with metal, it's a lot lighter and a lot cheaper to make. The cashiers can also see what's inside them to make sure nobody's stealing anything. It's also easier to keep clean because imagine if someone spilled milk inside of it. Lastly, if the cart is outside in the rain, it won't hold any water. This is the luckiest man alive. Frank Selleck was riding a train when it went off the tracks into a river. 17 passengers died, but he was able to swim to shore with nothing but a broken arm. The next year when he was on a plane, a door detached from the aircraft and it crashed. 19 people died, but Selleck was found in a haystack with a few bruises. In 1996, he was on a bus when it drove into a river. 4 people died, but again he survived. In 1970, his car's fuel tank exploded on the highway. In 1973, his fuel tank leaked and his car caught on fire. Fast forward to 1995 and he was in another bus crash. The next year when he was driving, a truck came barreling towards him. He jumped out of his vehicle and watched it explode. This 40-year-old married a 4-year-old, and the reason why will make you cry. This girl named Abby was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 2. And because of this, she spent most of her time in and out of the hospital. She was really sad until she met her nurse, Matt. He checked up on her every single day because he knew she didn't have much time left. And he also did everything that he could to make her feel loved. But Abby loved him so much that she told her mom that she wanted to marry him. Her mom then phoned Matt and asked him if her daughter could marry him. He said yes, and they had their wedding at the hospital. Even though it wasn't a real wedding and they used a ring pop, the little girl will remember this forever. How many colors are in this image? I'm gonna give you 3 seconds, and if you want, you could pause the video and comment down below. 3, 2, 1. There's actually only 2 colors, green and red. You may be thinking, is this guy dumb? There's clearly 2 different shades of green and 2 different shades of red. But there actually isn't. It just looks like that because in this line, the green and red are right beside each other, and in this one, there's white spaces in between. The world's most dangerous attraction. This giant natural crater is located in the desert of Turkmenistan. It's 100 feet deep and it's been burning non-stop for over 50 years, reaching temperatures of up to 1000 degrees Celsius. This human catapult is located in New Zealand. If you're brave enough to go on it, you'll be launched 150 meters across the Nevis Valley at a speed of 60 miles per hour, but it only lasts around 1.5 seconds, so you better not blink or you might miss it. The Crocosaurus Cove is located in Australia. You're submerged underwater in a transparent capsule that allows you to basically swim with the huge crocodiles. And finally, we have this 72-foot high swing located in China, which allows people to swing over the cliff of a mountain. Unbelievable hidden homes you won't believe exist. An architect named Laura decided to buy an abandoned public toilet in London, and she turned it into a luxurious home. It might be a bit strange to enter this house from the street since it looks like you're going into the bathroom, but she spent $80,000 on it to make it a house. This place located in Florida allows you to sleep with the fish. It's an underwater research laboratory that was converted into a hotel. The cost per night is $900, but it also includes an underwater pizza delivery delivered by a diver. To enter it, you have to dive into the water and swim through the entrance, but the view makes it worth it. And lastly, we have this treehouse that was built in the middle of a forest in Sweden. It almost looks invisible because it's surrounded by one-way mirror, so guests can look out, but nobody could look in. It has space for 2 people to stay in it, and it costs $559 a night. Outdated laws you won't believe still exist. In Louisiana, you can be fined $500 for delivering a pizza to someone else's house. In North Carolina, it's illegal for a bingo game to last more than 5 hours. It's also illegal to be drunk while you're playing it. In South Carolina, pinball is considered too addictive for kids, so you have to be at least 18 years old to play it. In Vermont, women must have permission from their husbands before getting fake teeth. 3 tricks Walmart doesn't want you to know. Have you ever been at the store and someone asks you if you want to try a free sample or a new product? Well, a scientist said when you take the free sample, it makes your brain think it's dinner time, making you want to buy it. They sometimes put items on sale to make you think like you're getting a better deal, when in reality they put the sale price as what they would normally sell it for as retail. You may think they just throw products on the shelves randomly, but they actually do it strategically. The top shelf has smaller brands, regional brands, and gourmet brands. They put them there to give tone and texture to the shelf, to help the store stand out from its competitors. The 2 shelves below are where they put the top selling brand, because it's at the customer's eye level, giving them a higher chance of buying it. Below that are the kids shelves, where they usually place child appealing items, making the kids want to ask their parents if they could buy it. And finally, on the very bottom, they have the local brands and bulk items. This dog sleeps in a graveyard, and here's why. Wiley is a Siberian wolf who belonged to its owner named Gladys, who unfortunately passed away. In a video posted in 2013 that has over 4 million views, it looked and sounded like the dog was making the same noises that humans make when we cry. It was the first time the family had ever seen him like this. He was doing this as he laid down on the grave of his old owner. His family had to pet him and talk to him to make him feel better. Years ago, Wiley was a service dog who helped war veterans overcome their post-traumatic stress disorder. After Gladys's death, her grandson promised to take good care of Wiley for the rest of his life. Some people think that the dog was sneezing and not crying, but Gladys's family claims that they've never seen him do that before and he's never done it again. What do you think? The most unique things in the entire world. This person made a face on the wall from a shadow of crumpled up paper. This flower packaging can also be used as a stand. This bridge was designed so you could get your feet wet while you walk across the bridge. They somehow managed to turn this sidewalk into art. And finally, this carton comes with different designs, so when you line them up, it creates an image. This teacher gets pranked and it makes his day. At first, you can tell he wasn't in the best mood based on his facial expressions. A student was also doing work from another class and the teacher wasn't too happy about that. But that all changed when he sat down.
I have to finish. Well, you can finish it after you start my final. You're on my time now. All right, you need to separate.
What the heck was that?
Somebody seen her prank you. Hey! Hey, look here, grab me that cover. You guys.
3 mysterious doors that should never be opened. Number 1, the basement of the Taj Mahal. This 16th century monument has 2 levels of basement that are restricted to the public. According to some theories, this is because the hallways are sealed with marble, and if the doors were to open, the marble would be exposed with oxygen, causing the walls to collapse. Number 2, the Great Sphinx of Giza. 2 sealed chambers were discovered right under the arms of the monument 4,500 years ago. It is believed that there are hidden scrolls with secrets about life and records about the history of Atlantis, which is the mythical lost continent. And finally, number 3, the Tomb of the Lost Emperor. In 1974, the mausoleum of Qing Shi Huang, who was the first Chinese emperor, was discovered, and an army of 8,000 soldiers was also found. However, the emperor's tomb has never been opened, because it's believed that inside is a bunch of highly toxic mercury. The biggest things ever stolen. A tank from the California Army was stolen by an unemployed plumber in 1995. The man destroyed everything in his path as the police chased him for 20 minutes. A beach in Jamaica was stolen in 2008. Police still don't know who did it, but they took sand that corresponds to 500 truckloads of sand. A World War II fighter plane was stolen by an Air Force commander. He restored it and sold it for over $300,000. This 3,000-pound bell was stolen from a Buddhist temple. The bell was only used for special occasions and was priceless to the monks, but it was sold for $500 a year later. And believe it or not, people in Mahatma village in India stole a mountain peak. They worked 11 hours a day to cut the rock. They stole it, then sold it so they could feed their families. This mom lets her kids do whatever they want, and you won't believe what they can do. Her name is Leah Marshall, a 36-year-old, and her strategy is to say yes to everything. So first off, for breakfast, she allows them to eat any type of candy they want, including ice cream. Secondly, they don't have to do their homework or even go to school at all. They could stay home and play video games all day. And lastly, she even allows them to swear at her. Now you may think her kids are probably rude and spoiled, but they're actually the opposite. Since their mom says yes to everything and lets them do whatever they want, those things become less special to them. So for example, after a few months of eating candy for breakfast, they're sick of it and no longer crave those things. Lucky people who survived the impossible. In June 2015, Natalia Pasternak was collecting birch sap with her friend in Siberia when she was suddenly attacked by a huge brown bear for over an hour. While this was going on, her friend went to go get help. The bear buried Natalia because it no longer thought she was alive, and so that way the bear could come back later and eat her. But when the police arrived, they noticed that she was still alive and rescued her. Next up, we have Phineas Gage, who was working with his crew on the construction of railroad tracks near Cavendish, Vermont in 1848. While he was shoving explosives into a hole with an iron bar, the accident happened. The explosives ended up exploding, shooting the 43-inch iron rod straight up into the air, which ended up penetrating his cheek, skull, and brain and landing 25 yards away from him. He managed to walk to a coworker and was taken to the hospital. When he arrived there, everyone was shocked because even though what had just happened, he was still able to communicate fine. After a month of rest, he was finally able to leave his house, but he did end up losing his left eye. A stranger left an envelope full of cash, and you won't believe what happens when this man opens it up. One morning, Rob Edwards went to the bank, but before he went inside, he noticed a lady running up behind him also going into the bank. When they got inside, they started talking while they were waiting in line, and Rob told the lady that today was his son's graduation. They talked about their families for a bit, and then the lady, who he had never talked to before in his life, took her turn at one of the bank tellers. Then something unexpected happened. The lady left an envelope on the counter and quickly left the building. It was Rob's turn, so he walked up to the counter and saw the envelope, so he decided to look inside and found a bunch of money. He immediately ran out of the bank to try and find the lady so he could give it back to her. Luckily, he managed to stop her as she was driving out of the parking lot and gave the envelope to her, but what she said will shock you. But before I tell you, I found this app that shows you who your celebrity lookalike is, and apparently I look like Zach King. Just press the link in the comments to try it. The lady explained to him that he glowed with pride when he talked about his son, which made her feel happy, so she wanted to leave him the envelope as a gesture of kindness. The power of time. This is what the barber's floor looks like after walking around the chair every day. This guy had his wallet for so long that his driver license photo imprinted on the plastic. Here's a comparison of the right-handed people and the left-handed people at a school. Here's what 14 years of this cat scratching looks like. This guy's shoe shows the bones in his feet from moving around weight with his foot. The glass globe of this light focused the sunlight enough to burn the sun's path in the grass. The paint on this vehicle wore out because it's the dog's favorite spot. Now before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that lets you remove anything from your photos. Just click the link in the comments to get it. This wall broke, exposing years of layers of paint. Dark secrets you didn't know about SeaWorld. SeaWorld is home to orcas who were kidnapped from the ocean, but the stories they tell about their captures are way different from what actually happened. For example, one of the stories they tell is that one of the orcas, which they named Tilikum, was rescued when she was 2 years old because she was injured in the ocean. But the truth is that she was taken away from her natural habitat against her will and given to SeaWorld for exhibition. The dolphins in the park suffer from stress caused by the contact they have with humans, which prevents them from feeding, resting, and taking care of their babies. Even though this information is supported by studies done at the University of Newcastle, they continue to let the public touch them. Finally, all the animals suffer from terrible consequences from overcrowding and unnatural living conditions. For example, the whales live in spaces that would be equivalent to us living in a bathtub, which doesn't allow them to swim enough to stay healthy, and you could tell by their collapsed dorsal fins. But SeaWorld claims that it's a natural condition. Genius inventions that should exist everywhere. In Poland, this bike path was made using thousands of tiny luminophores, which is a material that produces low levels of light for 10 hours, then recharges itself from the sun. The bike path doesn't require electricity and provides safety for people biking at night. 20 different cities in France have already implemented this. It allows you to charge your phone by using pedal power. The goal of the company is to promote an active lifestyle while making sure your phone doesn't die. People who use the bike also get free Wi-Fi. The Cal Maritime Police Department in California has placed a safe zone outside which is watched by a camera 24/7. They made this zone so you don't have to worry about getting hurt or robbed while purchasing things from people in your city. Did you know bananas are going extinct? Currently, the most common and available type of banana on the market is Cavendish. But this wasn't always the case. Up until the 1960s, a different type of banana called the Gros Michel was in stores. But a fungus called Panama disease destroyed thousands of banana crops around the world, which eventually caused the Gros Michel banana to go extinct. It was then replaced with a more disease-resistant banana, which is the Cavendish. Now, 60 years later, the fungus is back and threatening to repeat history. Due to the lack of genetic diversity in Cavendish bananas, they're not as resistant to fungus like they once were. And the fungus has also evolved to be immune to most pesticides. One expert estimates that Panama disease could reduce banana production by 80 to 85% each year, which could eventually lead to extinction, or at very least, cost you a lot more at the grocery store. This woman won the lottery 4 times. Her name is Joanne R. Ginther, and she is originally from Texas. In 1993, Ginther won her first lottery and a prize of $5.4 million. She won the lottery again in 2006, and then again in 2010, bringing her total lottery winnings to $20.4 million. One mathematician estimated that the odds of hitting 4 big wins were 1 in 18 septillion. So how could this happen? Is she the luckiest woman alive? Probably, but it's more likely that there is some kind of scam involved. Some investigation revealed that Ginther was a mathematics professor who specialized in statistics, and most people who study the case agree that the odds are just too unlikely to be a coincidence. But for now, Ginther enjoys her lottery winnings in Las Vegas and keeps a low profile. 3 rejected Shark Tank pitches that made millions. First off, we have the Ring doorbell. So if you don't know what it is, it's a doorbell that has a camera on it, and whenever it detects motion or someone rings the doorbell, it sends a notification to your phone, where you can then go onto the app and see them or even talk to them. When Jamie Siminoff appeared on the show, the company was worth $7 million. Now the company doesn't just make doorbells, but they also make home security systems and a bunch more. Amazon gave them $1 billion to have their items on their website. The Books is an online flower delivery service. In 2014, they left Shark Tank without an investor. But 3 years later, one of the sharks needed flowers for his wedding and ended up using the service. After that, he ended up investing in them. And in 2017, they sold $1 million of flowers in just 1 day. Finally, the bed jet is placed under your covers and allows you to change the temperature, rather than changing it for your whole house, which costs more money. But since he had no sales, all the sharks were out. When he released it to the market, he sold $3 million worth in his first month. Inspectors found 110 violations at this restaurant, but when they went back to see if it was better, they found even more. A few weeks ago, I made a video on this restaurant called the China Buffet, which had 110 violations, including things like meat being left out of the freezer, a worker smoking in the kitchen, and more. But this time, when the inspectors went to see if they fixed anything, this is what happened.
I want to talk to you. Why? Don't.
Don't touch my camera.
Why do you keep?
Don't touch my camera.
Why is the place not getting better?
Since the place was shut down after the first inspection, they had 9 more inspections within 3 months. They eventually did meet inspection standard and were reopened, but only a month later they were shut down again with another 74 violations. And if you add up all of them from each time, there's a total of 518. Lots of the violations were repeats from last time, including suspicious odors, insects in the kitchen, cooking equipment full of food particles and grease, and a bunch more. This baboon worked for a railway and never made a mistake. James Wilde went by the nickname Jumper because he had the habit of jumping in between the moving carts on the track. But unfortunately, in the 1800s, one of those times, he fell off onto the railway tracks, losing both of his legs. He continued to work using pegs to walk around, but he noticed he couldn't signal as efficient as before. One day when he was at the market, he seen a baboon that was trained to push a wagon. Jumper begged the owner to let him take the baboon, and he finally agreed. But he warned him that the baboon wouldn't do anything unless he was given lots of alcohol. At work, when Jumper held up a certain amount of fingers, the baboon would pull down the corresponding lever. And after a while, the baboon learned to do everything himself. Jumper's boss knew he had someone helping him, but didn't know it was a baboon, so tried firing them both. Jumper begged his boss to see how smart the baboon was, so he agreed to let him take a test. He performed the job perfectly, so the boss let them stay. And he even started paying the baboon 20 cents a day and half a bottle of alcohol a week. In the 9 years that he worked, he never made a mistake. This lady called the police on a girl selling water, and here's what the cops did. One day in the summer of 2018, it was really hot and humid, and a girl named Jordan wanted to go to Disneyland. So she got the idea to sell water bottles and use the profit to go on her trip. Her mom stood by and watched to make sure everything was under control. She got plenty of customers since she was on the sidewalk that led to the San Francisco Giants game. But all of a sudden, an angry lady approached her. She said that she was trying to work across the street, but there was too much noise. She also said that the girl was breaking the law by selling water without a permit. Jordan didn't pack up and leave, so the lady got out her phone and called 911. Jordan's mom decided to start recording her, and she posted it online, where it went viral. The lady in the video later apologized on live television and said that she didn't actually call 911, she was only pretending to get the girl to move. But it was later revealed by the police that she actually did call 911 and overreacted. Things you're doing wrong and didn't know. Deodorant should actually be applied at night and not in the morning. Since you produce less sweat at night, your armpits will be able to absorb more of the active ingredients, allowing it to work for approximately 24 hours. The correct way to peel a banana is to start from the bottom and not the top. Doing it this way, it's easier to peel, and it also helps you remove those white strips of banana that get stuck to it. You don't need to fill your entire toothbrush with toothpaste. Just covering a third of the toothbrush is plenty. If you want your sticky notes to stick properly, you should peel them from the sides. Finally, the right way to cover an ice cream container after opening it is by placing wax paper or plastic wrap against the surface of the ice cream before closing it, because doing this prevents it from losing its creaminess. Kids who remember their past lives. Sam Taylor is a boy who was born shortly after his grandfather passed away, and in his first year he already had memories of his grandfather's life. He even said to his father, "I remember when I used to change your diapers," when Sam's father was changing his. Shanae is a boy who was born with 2 birthmarks on his head. From the age of 3, he started having memories of his past life as a teacher, who was killed by a gunshot to the head. James Leininger is a kid who started having nightmares at the age of 2 about his past life as a World War II pilot. He claimed that in his past life he was the pilot James Houston, who was shot down in action in the Pacific Ocean. If you see a coin in your car door handle, run and call the police. Thieves have found a sneaky new way to steal vehicles. They put a coin in your car door handle just like this, and if it's on the passenger side, you probably won't notice it. Then when you go to lock your car, it won't lock properly, leaving it unlocked for thieves. They can then follow you home, go inside it, and steal everything, including the car itself. The most respectful moments in sports. After winning the match, his opponent was left injured, so he helped them get off the mat. After a basketball game, Steph Curry signed the shoes that he was wearing, then gave them to a fan in the audience, and here was their reaction. During a post-match interview, a fan ran into the field, so the security took him away. But the player felt bad, so he ran over to him to take a picture with him. Four people who celebrated too early. In this volleyball game, a player managed to save the ball with their foot, and the other team didn't expect it, so they started celebrating. After this goalie saved the ball from going in the net, he stopped paying attention to the ball and celebrated, but then this happened. During the Ironman, which is where you swim 2.5 miles, bike 112 miles, and run a 26-mile marathon, this guy started jumping in the air to celebrate. Then his ankle gave out on him right before the finish line. And finally, during this race, the person in 5th place started sprinting as fast as she could to pass everyone and win the race, while the person in the lead was already celebrating. 5 people who won the food lottery part 4. This person's watermelon had no seeds. This person got multiple strawberries fused to one. This person got a fry from Arby's shaped as a treble clef. This person got a triple kiwi, and this person found a really long marshmallow. Here's the only way to survive a falling elevator. Many people think you should jump right before impact. However, it'll be really hard to jump when you're falling. And secondly, if you're falling at a speed of 50 miles per hour and you jump 5 miles per hour into the air, you'll still hit the ground going 45 miles per hour. Instead, you should lie flat on your back because this way the impact gets spread equally to your whole body. But remember, with modern safety features, your chances of dying are 1 in 10 million. Scary experiments that could have ended the world. In 1970, the Soviet Union began digging a hole in Russia to try and drill into the Earth's crust to see what was underneath. But according to scientists, drilling this deep would dislodge so much rock so quickly that it would trigger systemic forces like never seen before. But after digging for 12 kilometers, they gave up due to high temperatures. In 1989, a Soviet defector informed the British embassy that the Soviet Union was preparing biological weapons, using deadly pathogenic microorganisms. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the weapons were never used, and if they had been, you might not be watching this, because they would have wiped out most of the world's population. And finally, it was said that when the Soviets were creating biological weapons to harm humans, Americans wanted to use fungi to damage crops with the intention of removing the food supply of the entire country. The problem is, if they did so, the fungus would have spread to not only the country but to the entire world. Secrets hotels don't want you to know. The free breakfast they offer isn't really free. The cost of the breakfast is included in the room's rate. The people who work in housekeeping only straighten the sheets and arrange the pillows. They only wash them if there's a visible stain. Booking a room is more expensive at night because that's when most people are looking for reservations. The ideal time to call the hotel is between 5 and 6 p.m. because at night they increase their prices because they know there's not many other options. Tipping the staff can give you a lot of benefits, such as deeper cleaning in your room, a special treatment, improvements in your room, and in general better service. 5-star hotels know your social status before you arrive and will give more attention to famous or wealthy people. And lastly, everything is negotiable. Hotels will always be open to negotiating a few things so you stay and leave a high review. 2 things you never realized you're doing wrong. If you've ever tried eating fast food while you're walking or in the vehicle, you know how hard it can be. Well, it turns out there's a right way to eat McDonald's when you're on the go with no table. First, you open your burger or nugget box and place it over your drink. Then dump all your fries onto the other side to balance it out. You may be thinking this is dumb and not the way, but McDonald's themselves posted this picture on Instagram showing that this is the ultimate meal hack. Now, have you ever hit your fingers while trying to put a nail in with a hammer? Well, lots of hammers have a slot on the top that you could place a nail in, so you don't have to hold the nail with your other hand when you make the first hit. This man went to jail for stealing $1. James Verone went into the RBC bank without a gun and handed the bank teller a note that said this:
This is a bank robbery. Please only give me $1.
Then he told her he was gonna go wait on the chair for the police to show up, which is what he did. He chose to steal $1 because he wanted them to know he wasn't doing it for the money. But you may be thinking, then why would he want to arrest himself? Well, the reason is because he has no medical insurance. He has a growth on his chest, 2 ruptured discs in his back, and a problem with his left foot. And he said he thought the most logical thing to do was go to jail so he could get medical care and a place to sleep. 3 famous actors then and where they are now. Tom Felton is best known for playing the role Draco in the Harry Potter series. The role helped him win 2 MTV Awards for the best villain. Years later, his co-host Emma Watson confessed on having a crush on him while they were filming. Since then, he's been in a lot of smaller movies and TV shows, but the biggest one being The Flash. Lots of people know who Freddie Highmore is, but only a few people know that he starred in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. He's done a bunch more movies and TV shows, but recently his most popular are Bates Motel and The Good Doctor. Finally, we have Macaulay Culkin. He was the first ever child to be paid $1 million for a role in a movie, all thanks to starring in Home Alone. He took a break in 1995 because he was tired of acting. In 2018, he launched a comedy website and podcast called Bunny Ears. He even recreated one of his scenes from Home Alone in a Google commercial, and is still doing some acting like in the movie Changeland, where he met his wife Brenda Song, who played London Timpton in Sweet Life on Deck. 5 viral photos that are actually fake. First off, you've probably seen this at the start of some movies. Well, this picture went viral online because everyone thought that this is how they made the clip. But it turned out to be a photoshopped picture of a lion being treated at the veterinarians. In this photo, it looks like the cat has eyebrows and a mustache, but in the real photo, there's no eyebrows, but there's still a mustache. This photo of a pilot taking a selfie mid-flight is actually just a photoshopped picture of him on the land. This cow sitting on a car isn't real either. Although this one is more believable than the other ones, here's the original photo. And finally, Paris Hilton got a lot of hate for this image because her t-shirt says stop being poor, but it actually said stop being desperate. People who got stuck in the strangest places. Jamie Bracken Murphy was a young Irish boy who got stuck in a stuffed animal vending machine. He wanted to grab one of the toys, so he went in the machine, but couldn't get out. Thankfully, it was easy for them to get him out, and he was only in there for a couple minutes. A man named Cato Larson got stuck in a toilet while trying to get his friend's phone out. He didn't just reach his hand in, he went all the way in the toilet and he couldn't get out. He couldn't find his phone either to call for help. He stayed there for an hour until he was freed by firefighters, who had to break the toilet to get him out. Finally, a woman named Rosie decided to get into a washing machine for a TikTok, but her legs got stuck, so she had to call someone for help to get her out. She tried calling her friends first, but they couldn't, so she ended up having to get help from the fire department. Companies that lied about their products. The Q-Ray bracelet was released in the 1970s, and it was claimed to improve balance, strength, and overall health. Lots of athletes used to wear them, and I even knew a few people myself who used to wear them. But in 2018, this man disagreed and gave them a $16 million lawsuit. In court, the owner said that the bracelets were ionized, and that's how you get the health improvements. So the CBC Marketplace decided to bring one to the lab and analyze it, and discovered that they actually weren't ionized. But that's not all. They also had to give back $87 million worth of refunds to people who bought them and wanted their money back. After this happened, the company filed for bankruptcy. But to this day, they still have a website that they sell them on, and now they have a disclaimer that it won't treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. This guy didn't do any work in a group project, so his partner got the ultimate revenge. The girl in the group needed 50% or better to pass the class and graduate, so she calculated that if she got 0% on the project, she would still pass. Since her partner didn't want to fail the class, he would call her every once in a while to see how she was doing. The girl kept saying she was almost done it when in reality she hadn't even started it. The day before it was due, he called her to ask her if she could send him the presentation. She sent him an empty PowerPoint, then shut off her phone so he couldn't call her. The day of the presentation, he was nervous, but the girl reassured him by saying she would do everything. When they got up to present to the class, she said, "I already had a good enough grade to pass the class, and since my partner decided not to do any work, I decided to take the day off." He ended up having to go to summer school, but he didn't pass, so he has to take his senior year all over again. If you see black spots on your fries, this is what it is. They're not anything bad, they're just pockets of sugar. If the fries are stored in a fridge or a freezer, then some of the starch that they contain turns into sugar. And when the cook deep fries them, it makes the sugar on the outside cook before the inside, which is why they're dark and can sometimes taste a little burnt. Dumb inventions that people actually use. The Hug Me pillow was designed for people who miss their partners. Its shape stimulates half of the upper back of a human and an arm to cuddle with. One of the sillier inventions that are actually really popular are cutters. They make cutters for avocados, strawberries, bananas, and even boiled eggs. The egg cracker has become really popular. It's a pretty simple machine. You just place the egg inside, press the device, and it cracks the shell. The toothpaste dispenser is something that lots of people didn't know they needed until it came out. You just put your toothbrush in the opening, a little bit of toothpaste comes out, and that's it. The ostrich pillow's design promises that you'll have a very comfortable nap. Basically, you just put your head inside the pillow, and depending on what position you're lying in, you could also put your hands inside. This couple recognized the car from an Amber Alert, then chased them down. A little girl from Springfield was kidnapped when she got off the school bus. Around 1:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, she was shoved into a blue Honda. Once the police found out about this, they issued an Amber Alert, which if you don't know what this is, it's an emergency response system that sends a message describing what happened to your phone, your TV, and the radio. A few hours later, the cops got a call from a couple saying that they were following the blue Honda. When the driver in the Honda saw that he was being followed, he started going through red lights, but the couple following him did too. They managed to keep following him and explain to the cops where they were headed. They came up to construction on the road, which slowed them down, and they were intercepted by the cops. One of the cops safely got the girl out of the car while the other two pulled out the driver and arrested him. 5 insanely lucky moments in sports. In the final seconds of this high school basketball game, a player throws up a wild full court shot and manages to make it to win the game. Next up, this baton handoff should have been a disaster, but because of a few lucky bounces, the runners were able to save it. During a college football game, this pass should have easily been intercepted, but luckily for Auburn, 2 players from the other team collided, and the ball flew right into the arms of the receiver to complete the touchdown. After an incredible volley, it seems like Roger Federer is about to lose the point, but he's somehow able to make an incredible return between his legs. Okay, this one might not be lucky, this one might just be skill. And finally, Russell Westbrook is out of control as he dribbles towards the net. Not only does he draw a foul, he tosses up a Hail Mary that rolls off the backboard, hits the rim, then bounces in. Random acts of kindness that will make your day. This guy ran as fast as he could to get the baseball that went into the stands. I was super excited when he got it, but he noticed a little girl was there, so he decided to give it to her instead. This vehicle pulled out in front of someone on a motorcycle going really fast, but luckily he managed to dodge it. Instead of the man in the vehicle driving off, he decided to stop to make sure the biker was okay.
Sorry. Very sorry. Thank you. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for stopping, sir.
Yes.
You have a good Memorial
Are you
Day.
sure you're okay?
I'm positive, thank you.
This person's vehicle stopped working in the middle of a tunnel, so they got out and started to push it. When suddenly, someone on a motorcycle came, then another one came, and together they used their feet to push the vehicle out without even getting off the motorcycle. The craziest things found by airport security. In an Amsterdam airport, 200 bags of tarantulas were found. In 2015, a child was found in a suitcase that belonged to a 19-year-old girl traveling from Morocco to Spain. A couple from India were arrested at the airport for smuggling small bars of pure gold that they glued to their feet. At Shanghai airport, they opened a suitcase that contained live snakes, and in total there was 121 of them. 2 women were arrested at Liverpool airport for attempting to transport the body of a dead relative in a wheelchair. And finally, a tiger cub was found in the suitcase of a Thai woman traveling to Iran. She tried to make them think it was a stuffed animal because there were other stuffed animals in the suitcase. But in the end, the woman was arrested and the tiger was taken for special care. Here's how El Chapo escaped prison. If you don't know who he is, El Chapo was a drug lord with a net worth of around $2 to $4 billion. He was sentenced to 20 years in jail for murder and drug trafficking. He was placed in one of Mexico's top security prisons, but he managed to escape. In this footage from the 24-hour security camera in his cell, you can see him take off his slippers and go over to his shower and disappear. They later found out that under the shower was a hole that led to a tunnel, but since it was behind the shower, the camera couldn't see it. Inside the tunnel was a minecart that was built with a motorcycle so he could escape quickly. On the other side of the tunnel was this house that was only used to cover it up so no one would know that it was there. Here's what would happen if you fell off a cruise ship. In 2018, a British lady was on the Norwegian Star cruise ship when she suddenly fell off the back. As soon as the crew found out about this, they started a search and rescue for her. They also called the authorities, who sent water patrol, an aircraft, and 2 rescue boats to find her. After 10 hours, they managed to find her and quickly took her to the hospital. The chances of survival are slim, but she has several things in her favor. Because she worked as a flight attendant, so she probably knew what to do in this situation. Even though these accidents aren't very common, they have emergency protocols in place. If there's an eyewitness who can report what happened, the crew notifies the captain, who usually stops the ship and backs it up. The authorities and the Coast Guard are then notified, while the crew searches for the spot where the person fell off. If you ever fall overboard, it's important to stay calm, try to stay where you fell, don't drink seawater, and keep your clothes on. This is why you should always have a dash cam in your vehicle. This lady was test driving a vehicle from her husband's dealership when a cop passed her, then suddenly turned around and turned on his lights. She was stopped at a red light, then when it turned green, she turned. She didn't know if the officer was pulling her over because she didn't think she did anything wrong, but she pulled over anyway. When she put the vehicle into park, she took off her seatbelt. When the officer walked up to her window, she said that she took off her seatbelt because it was a habit. Then he said the reason he was pulling her over is because she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. She was being honest when she said it was a habit, but the officer was using it to his advantage. She remembered she had a dash cam and told him that. Then he walked away without giving her a ticket. If she never had a dash cam, it would have been her word versus the officer's. What number can you see inside of this circle? I'm gonna give you guys 5 seconds and I want you guys to comment down below what you guys see and then I'll tell you. 5. The numbers are actually 3, 4, 5, 2, 8, 8, 9. She had an itch in her nose, so she went to the hospital, then discovered something horrifying. Daniela Lavarni is a 24-year-old from Scotland, and she loves traveling to foreign countries. She decided her next trip would be to Asia. Her first stop was in Vietnam, but when she was there, she got into a motorcycle accident. Luckily, she wasn't badly hurt, but shortly after, she noticed an itch in her nose. Then a few hours later, her nose started to bleed. A few days later, she flew back to Scotland, but the itches and nosebleeds didn't stop. One day, when she got out of the shower, she looked in the mirror and there's a big blob coming out of her nose that went all the way down to her lip. So she immediately went to the hospital. After half an hour and a lot of pain, the doctors managed to pull out a leech from her nose. The doctor said it most likely got into her body from contaminated drinking water during her trip, then grew by feeding off of her blood. 5 people who beat the system. This teenager's parents were gone for 5 days, so they put a camera in the house. So the kid put the camera towards a picture of the house, so their parents wouldn't know if they have anyone over. This boy's mom told him to go play outside. So what did he do? He brought his computer and played outside. If you park in front of this sign, you have to pay. And if you park behind this sign, you'll get towed away. But they didn't say anything about parking in the middle. On a bonus question, the teacher put, hint, it's not Greenland. So that's what the student put and they got the mark. Now before I show you the smartest person, I found an app that gives you a personalized workout based on your body type and goals. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Finally, this person parked in an illegal spot, so they gave themselves a fake ticket so they wouldn't get a real one. Her dad passed away and 4 years later she received a text message from his number. In 2015, when Chastity was new to college, her father got into a car crash. He apparently crashed into a tree while going 90 90 miles per hour. Right after impact, the car's engine flew out of the car and landed on him, and he unfortunately didn't survive. His daughter was heartbroken and used to call his number for months, but then she started texting him about her day and other things. And just a few days before he had been passed away for 4 years, she received the reply. It said, "Hi sweetheart, I'm not Jason, but I've been getting all of your messages for the past 4 years." He said that every morning he looked forward to her messages and nightly updates. The 50-year-old man named Brad said that he had lost his daughter in a car crash, and when he started receiving her messages, he called her his angel. He said that he wished his daughter grew up to be like her, and that her dad would be proud. This bully took things too far and could have went to jail. A 15-year-old girl named Hannah Combs from Texas was only a few weeks into her sophomore year at high school. One day when she was talking with her friends, a boy snuck up behind her and did something to her. She immediately felt a burning sensation on her head, but she didn't know what he did to her. The boy did this because he thought it was funny. She started crying because of the pain, then passed out onto the floor. She was rushed to the hospital and the school phoned her parents as a protocol. Hannah had gotten 3rd-degree chemical burns, and the doctor said she would have to shave a portion of her hair. Apparently, the boy poured super glue on her hair for no reason. Her father wanted the police to file assault charges, but the bully's mom disagreed by saying he was just a kid and made a mistake. When the community learned about this, a hairdresser offered to give her a haircut for free. This video has no sound. Lots of people say that when the tower hits the ground, they can hear a noise. So what I want you to do is turn your volume down all the way, then comment below if you can hear anything. Here is the only way to survive a shark attack. Try to avoid fishing boats. When a fish gets hooked, it bleeds and attracts sharks. Also avoid swimming at night because the sharks won't be able to see as well and they might mistake you as fish. The odds of being attacked by a shark are 11.5 million to 1, but if you're still scared, here's how you could defend yourself. Sharks are sensitive in their gills, so you're going to want to keep punching them until you can slowly back away. An Australian and an American surfer both did this and they survived. The voices behind 3 of the most popular cartoons. SpongeBob SquarePants made Nickelodeon $12 billion. The voice actor for SpongeBob is Tom Kenny, who also voiced the mayor in Powerpuff Girls, Dog and Cat Dog, Spyro the Dragon, the Ice King from Adventure Time, and more. Patrick is played by William Mart Fagerbacke, who is in the sitcom Coach, and also How I Met Your Mother. In the movie Moana, Ollie E. Crivello said she wasn't gonna audition because she's seen so many good auditions on YouTube. Then someone finally convinced her. She was the last to audition and she got the part. Maui is played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He said he based the part on his father because Maui was very similar to him. Finally, in Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon is voiced by Academy Award winner Bradley Cooper. And his sidekick Groot is voiced by Vin Diesel from the Fast and Furious series. I am Groot. 5 animals that can live after death. Chickens can live without their heads as long as their brain stems aren't cut off, because most of their motor functions aren't controlled by the brain but by the brain stems. Salamanders have the ability to regenerate limbs and organs so they don't die. When they're old enough, they could regenerate again and again, even their brain, heart, and spinal cord. After a snake loses its head, it still has hours to live, so you better stay away from its head, because it can still inject you with its venom even after death. Flatworms can rebuild any part of its body after it's cut off. If they're cut in half, the head will rebuild the tail and vice versa, resulting in 2 flatworms. Cockroaches are resistant to radiation and are most likely to survive a nuclear attack. They can live after decapitation for a long time, but since they can't eat, they die of starvation. 5 Disney secrets you didn't know. If you look closely, some scenes from different Disney movies are quite similar. This is because the drawings were made by hand, and the animators only make a few changes to create a new scene. Lilo's voice belongs to the actress who played the role of Samara Morgan in the movie The Ring. Since Walt Disney wanted to spend most of his free time at Disneyland, he created a secret apartment on the 2nd floor of the fire station on Main Street, located on the famous avenue that leads to the park's Central Plaza. The name of the wizard in the movie Fantasia is Yensid, which is Disney in reverse. Simba means lion in the Swahili language, and Boo's real name is Mary because the person who plays her is called Mary Gibbs. Finally, Walt ordered to build a bunch of tunnels underneath the park to allow the actors to get from place to place without the public noticing so they wouldn't lose the magic of the place. This hole appeared out of nowhere, but we finally know why. In 2018, this random hole appeared in Lake Berryessa. Evan Kilkus, who worked at the boat and jet ski rental place at the lake, loves drones and decided to explore the lake with one. But then he found something weird. It appeared to be a massive hole, so he decided to fly his drone a bit closer. He didn't see anything unusual at first until he flew a bit farther over the dam. There was a large hole at the bottom of the dam with water gushing out of it. Apparently the hole was made when the lake was made, and it's there to make sure the lake doesn't overflow. The reason no one noticed it before is because it was so dry, and there wasn't enough water to cover the hole until there was a massive rainfall. Here's why you should never touch a dead whale. The blue whale is the largest animal on the planet and can reach 29 meters in length. The weight of this animal is 180 tons tons, which is equivalent to 33 elephants. And although everyone would be attracted if they see one, it's best to stay far away if you see a dead whale due to health reasons. If you touch a dead whale with wounds, you can be infected with viruses or bacteria. And if you're exposed to the gases that it releases for too long, it can cause you to faint. Also, when a whale dies, it decomposes and generates many internal gases that can cause it to explode at any second. When that happens, the whale pieces can fly at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour for up to 70 meters around it. That's why they have to create holes in a dead whale so that it releases as many gases as possible so it doesn't explode. Homeless people who won the lottery. Laszlo Andrzejczyk was an alcoholic from Hungary who lost everything. He was homeless for 7 years with hundreds of unpaid debts. But his luck changed when he bought a lottery ticket for just a few pennies. He won 636 million Hungarian guilders, which is equivalent to $2.5 million. A man living in his car from England bought a lottery ticket with his last few pennies. He put the ticket away, and 6 months after he bought it, he found out that he had won £250,000. A homeless man who lived in a tent won $50,000 after buying a ticket. Even though he could have bought a small house to live in, he chose to upgrade his tent and help his homeless friends by giving them each $100. 3 things Disneyland doesn't want you to know. For a long time, there's been a rumor that some of the bones on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride are from real human skeletons. In 2014, a writer asked an employee about the rumor as he was getting off the ride, and she said the skeleton sitting above the bed in the treasure room contains a real human skull. Underneath Disneyland, there's a massive system of underground tunnels. One of the purposes for the tunnels is to keep the magic alive by hiding the characters when they're not supposed to be seen. Emergency vehicles also use the tunnels to get to their patient while trying to be unseen by the public so they don't kill the vibe. Disneyland strategically releases a vanilla scent through smellitizers which look like speakers. They do this because the scent is proven to calm people down, and it also makes them hungry so they'll spend more money on food. At the main entrance, they use the smell of popcorn. The Haunted Mansion is made to smell musty, and at the Pirates of the Caribbean, they released the scents of wet wood and sea salt. Here's what things costed in 1950. At the grocery store, a loaf of bread costed 14 cents. A gallon of milk cost 80 cents, and a dozen eggs cost 49 cents. A trip to the movies would set you back 65 cents for a ticket, and another 10 cents for a bag of popcorn. A bleacher seat for an MLB All-Star game costed $1. A night at a hotel was $5.90. The average price for a new car was around $1,500, and the gas to fill it cost 18 cents a gallon. Finally, a massive 12.5-inch black and white TV was around $150. 5 people who beat the system, part 5. At this resort, you're not allowed to have drinks by the pool, so they made a massive straw and left the drink on their balcony. This guy said his name was Mark, spelled with a C, so instead of changing the K to a C, they changed the M to a C. The teacher told them they could only have a one-sided cheat sheet, so this student taped the paper to make both sides one side. This guy's girlfriend told him to wear a plain tie, so he sent her this picture of a tie with planes. Now before I show you the smartest one, I found a really addicting app that lets you create games to play with your friends, and also play millions of other games created by other players. Just click the link in the comments to get it. Finally, this town wasn't allowed to have a statue so close to the road, so they put a flag in it to make it a flagpole. In this 100-meter hurdle, an athlete from Cuba broke a world record, but it was a really close race between him and the athlete beside him from China. Everyone thought that the guy from Cuba won, but when you look at the replay in slow motion, you can see the guy from Cuba pushing the guy from China. This swimmer named Sun Hang, who has a bad reputation of being rude to opponents, said this. After this, he was later found guilty of taking out-of-competition substances and was banned from the Olympics for 8 years. A figure skater got attacked by a random man when she got off of the ice. He used a baton to injure her leg. It was later found out that the person who did this was another figure skater's husband. His wife said she had nothing to do with it, but she was fined $100,000. This 6-year-old boy became the youngest soldier in World War II. Sergei Aleshkov, a 6-year-old boy, was orphaned during World War II after German troops arrived and killed everyone in his village, including his mother and brother. Sergei managed to escape with the help of a neighbor and quickly ran into the forest. After a few days, he was found by Soviet scouts who took him to a shelter led by Major Kozelski. Kozelski decided to leave him with the battle troops, and he was soon adopted by Mikhail Vorobyov, who didn't want to send him to an orphanage. Sergei didn't take part in combat operations. Instead, he had tasks like delivering letters and newspapers. He also brought the soldiers whatever they needed, including water, ammo, and grenades. But one of the times he went to deliver the newspaper, he saw suspicious people in a haystack and informed the artillery commander. The people turned out to be German spies who were then neutralized. After the war, Vorobyov raised Sergei, who later got married, had 2 children, and passed away in 1990. 2 prison guards who were saved by inmates. In this footage from 2015, 17-year-old Jamal Lutridge is being processed at Fort Lauderdale Police Department. As the officer is booking the teenager for burglary, he gets a pain in his chest and collapses onto the floor. The boy looks around and realizes they're alone, so he starts yelling and kicking on the door to get some help, and ended up saving him from a potentially deadly heart attack. They even had a ceremony to honor him. Inmates from a jail in Georgia were at a cemetery watering the plants and cutting the grass. As the day day went on, the guards started to hyperventilate due to the heat and collapsed, leaving the prisoners there without any guards. They could have easily ran away, but they didn't. 6 of the prisoners rushed immediately to help the guard. They took off his bulletproof vest so he could breathe better, and one of them grabbed his phone to call 911. And because they saved a life, all 6 of them got their sentences reduced by a quarter. This McDonald's worker paid for her family's meal after the mom forgot her wallet, and the way she repays him will shock you. When Brittany was driving her 3 kids home from football, her youngest kid started crying because he was hungry. So she decided to go to McDonald's and get everyone food. When she got to the drive-thru, she ordered, then pulled up to the first window to pay. But then she noticed she forgot her wallet. She then looked up to the McDonald's worker with tears in her eyes because she was so stressed, and told him to cancel her order. The worker was a 16-year-old kid named Wyatt. Without even thinking, he pulled out his wallet and paid for the family's food. The family later found out that he was saving up money to buy a car, and the way they repay him will shock you, but before I tell you how, my merch just released today. If you want to support me and get some sick looking clothes while you're at it, just press a link in the comments to check it out. The family set up a GoFundMe page, and it raised over $50,000. A robber pointed his gun at this man's kids, and you won't believe what he did. In 2011, an armed robber went into the Bank of America. The first thing he did was point his gun at the workers, and told all the customers to lie down on their bellies. Then he put bags on the counter and forced the workers to fill them with money. While they were doing that, the robber pointed his gun at 2 children. This made the kid's father mad, so he came up with a plan to defeat him in his head. He waited for the robber to go outside, then when he did, the father ran after him, then started trying to tackle him onto the ground. But the robber pointed his gun to the father's face. The father then grabbed his neck and twisted his arm, which caused him to fall to the ground. He then took the weapon and money and pointed it at the robber. It only took him a few seconds before he realized it was a plastic gun, and at the same time the police arrived. Since he saved the bank from losing a ton of money, the news decided to interview him, and he introduced himself as Sergeant Eddie Peoples, who had been in 5 major deployments. He said the gun didn't scare him, but when he pointed it at his kids, he knew he had to do something. Moments when singers knew they messed up. During a Fifth Harmony concert before they split up, the singer Camila Cabello was hyping up the crowd when her part of the song started playing, exposing that they were all lip syncing. At the Billboard Awards, the singer Miguel tried jumping from one part of the stage to another, but he accidentally hit a fan. Luckily, the fan wasn't injured too bad, and after in an interview, she said that she still adored him.
I adore him.
And you still adore him, even though you've got an ice pack on your elbow.
But the weird part is, 2 years later, she decided to sue him. This man, who is an author and a rapper, went on live TV and decided to freestyle.
Years ago, they tried to put me in the... this is a lie.
But it didn't go very well, and the next time he was on the show, they introduced him as just an author and not a rapper. Facts you think are lies, but are actually true. The Italian term spaghetti, used to name a type of pasta, is plural, and if you want to refer to a single piece of pasta in a package, the correct term is spaghettio. Columbus Day is celebrated in the United States on the 2nd Monday of October. But the truth is, Columbus never set foot in the United States. Man stepped on the moon before wheeled suitcases were made. Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon in 1969, and suitcases with wheels were created in 1972. Clouds in the sky may look really light, but depending on the size, they weigh about a ton. The military uses dogs to detect bombs, thanks to their scenting abilities, which is really useful for ground operations. But what many people don't know is that the Navy trains and uses dolphins to detect bombs at sea and even attack enemy ships. The strangest last meal requests on death row. Ricky Ray Rector killed a man in a restaurant, then ran away. 3 days later, he agreed to turn himself in, but then he shot the police officer in the back. His last meal included steak, fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and a slice of pie. But he didn't even touch the pie. And when they asked him why, he said he was saving it for later. Peter J. Miniel robbed and murdered a 20-year-old by stabbing him 39 times. For his meal, he requested 20 beef tacos, 20 beef enchiladas, 2 double cheeseburgers, a pizza with jalapenos, fried chicken, spaghetti with salt, half a chocolate cake, half a vanilla cake, cookies and cream ice cream, caramel fudge ice cream, a small fruit cake, 2 Coca-Colas, 2 Pepsis, 2 root beers, and 2 orange juices. Finally, we have Velma Barfield, who killed a total of 6 people. And all she wanted for her last meal was a bag of cheesy doodles and a can of Coke. 7 random facts you'll hear for the first time. The bones of mice are extremely flexible, so much so that they can even fit into the hole of a pen. Stop signs were yellow until they were changed into red in 1954. The defense mechanism for the mimic octopus is insane. It can change color and take on the shape of another animal, like sea snakes, flounders, or lionfish. The hole in the middle of a spaghetti spoon isn't only to drain water, it's also used to measure a portion for one person. The hottest place inhabited by humans is Dalol, Ethiopia, where temperatures have reached 49 degrees Celsius. The only letter in the English alphabet that isn't in the periodic table is J. When tea was first marketed, the beverage was placed in hand-sewn cloth bags. The idea was that the consumers would pull the leaves out of the bag, but they didn't know that and used it that way. They were a success and are still used like that. The reason there's UFO sightings in Area 51 1951. In the 1950s, US planes were doing low-flying recon missions over Russia. They did these missions to obtain more information because they were enemies, but they were constantly worried about being spotted and shot down. So in 1954, the president authorized the development of a high-flying top-secret aircraft. They needed a location that wasn't easily accessed by the public, so they chose Area 51. In 1955, there were spottings of UFOs in that area, and this is because they were testing the new aircraft that they built. It could fly higher than 60,000 feet in the air, and at the time, normal aircrafts could only fly 10,000 to 20,000 feet in the air. So when pilots would spot this top-secret aircraft above them, they would think it's a UFO. 5 insane security features of the White House. The 147 windows in the White House are backed with a second layer of ballistic glass behind each one. The drones that fly over the White House are used for 2 reasons: security cameras and to eliminate any other drones that may be a threat. The White House also has a bunch of infrared sensors that cover the entire area. They're activated quickly and they alert the entire White House security. There's about 1,200 uniform agents guarding the White House 24 hours a day every single day. But there's also 2,800 agents in regular clothes ready to act if there's a threat. And finally, after 2 incidents when a helicopter landed on the White House and a small plane crashed on the ground, the government declared that flying over Washington, D.C. was prohibited. If a plane doesn't follow the landing route, which is at Ronald Reagan National Airport, the pilot receives a warning signal. If he doesn't follow the instructions, it can be fatal because there's surface-to-air missiles located on Capitol Hill to attack any potential threats.
Things with misleading names. Even though the word nut is in the name, peanuts are a legume, like peas and beans. The lead in lead pencils is actually a mix of graphite and clay. French fries originated in Belgium, and the French horn originated in Germany. Pork butt is a cut of meat that comes from a pig's shoulder. Fireflies are actually beetles, and guinea pigs are actually rodents. Finally, white chocolate isn't really chocolate, because it contains no solid part of the cocoa bean.
The strangest last meal requests on death row. In 1963, Victor Harry Fager was sentenced to death for a kidnap and murder. For his final meal, he requested a single olive with the seed left in it. After his execution, the seed was found in his pocket. They believe he wanted to be buried with it so a tree would sprout on top of him. Gerald Lee Mitchell requested an assorted bag of Jolly Ranchers and he ate every single one. In 1990, James Edward Smith requested a lump of soil, but because dirt isn't on the list of permitted food, he was served a cup of yogurt instead. Thomas Grasso was convicted of robbery and murder. He requested a bunch of things, like a cheeseburger from Burger King, 2 strawberry milkshakes, but the thing he wanted the most was SpaghettiOs, which he didn't receive. Instead, he got spaghetti which was supposedly too warm. His last words before dying were, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." 5 animals that can kill themselves. Sometimes the horns of rams and goats grow so curved and big that they penetrate their skull, causing their death. Horses and donkeys can suffer from abnormal growth in their hooves. If their hooves aren't trimmed, they can no longer walk because of the pain, causing them to die from starvation. When turtles fall on their back, it's really hard for them to roll back over. When this happens, they usually die from too much sun, starvation, or attacks from another animal. During mating season, deers get into such aggressive fights with each other that their antlers get stuck together to the point where they can't be untied. When this happens and no one can separate them, the deer die because they're unable to eat. Finally, the deer pig is famous for its 2 upper tusks. The growth becomes so uncontrollable that it pierces the upper part of their jaw, and in some cases when they're really big, they could pierce their skull, causing their death.
Photos you'll have to look at twice. This chair at the dentist looks like a Lego figure. This person's toothbrush's shadow looks like Darth Vader. The paint that got chipped off of this really old chair looks like a city skyline. In this city, it only rained on one side of the road. And finally, at first, this looks like a Kinder Surprise egg, but it's actually a real egg from a chicken.
School trips that went horribly wrong. On a trip for the Cub Scouts to a beach in San Diego, the parents got an embarrassing surprise when they realized the beach was a nude beach. After the awkward encounter, the parents quickly returned the boys. In Indiana, a chemistry teacher wanted to connect with his students, so he invited them to his house to drink and smoke, and then he took them to the club. Then on the way home, they were pulled over for speeding. The teacher was then fired from his job. Finally, in Washington, a father was taking his daughter on a school trip when another father recognized him from being on the Washington's most wanted list. After a struggle with the police, the man escaped. However, after negotiations, the man turned himself in the same night. Things your parents told you that are actually false. Number 1, carrots help you see in the dark. Carrots are full of vitamin A, which helps maintain eyesight but won't give you night vision. Number 2, Fruit Loops have different flavors based on their color, but in reality, all Fruit Loops taste the same. Number 3, dropping a penny from the Empire State Building can kill someone that's standing below, but a penny can't get that much speed to do that. Number 4, all chocolate is bad for your health, but dark chocolate in small amounts can be beneficial for your health. Number 5, oranges are always orange. Some oranges stay green to protect them from the sun. Number 6, the humps on camels store water. What they actually do is store fat.
5 rare phobias you've never heard of. Plutophobia is fear of money. People with this condition are afraid of handling, making, and being around money. Some people might even sabotage their own careers to avoid making money. Omphalophobia is fear of belly buttons. In an extreme case, one person with this phobia became physically sick from just the sight of a belly button. Decidophobia is exactly what it sounds like, a fear of making decisions. Dextrophobia is the fear of having objects on the right side of your body. This can also include the fear of being right-handed. And lastly, there's phobophobia, which is, you guessed it, the fear of phobias. Rich athletes that went completely broke, part 1. First off, we have Mike Tyson, who's earned over $400 million in his career. He spent a lot of money on random things, but the most random one has to be his tigers. He spent a total of $70,000 to get 3 tigers, but in order to feed them, he has to pay another $200,000 per year. He then had to pay another $125,000 to get them house trained at his $2.5 million mansion. But that didn't seem to work because one of them attacked his neighbor, and he was forced to pay another $250,000 in damage bills. So just from his tigers alone, he spent $650,000, which still isn't that much for him since he can get paid $30 million for a fight. But he kept doing things like that, for example spending $2 million on gold bathtubs, millions more on limos, parties, clothes, vehicles, mansions, and a ton more. Until in 2003 when he went bankrupt, and by the age of 37 he was $38 million in debt. But only 7 years before that he spent over $400,000 on one night of partying for his 30th birthday. This 3-year-old was kidnapped in the middle of the day. On the sidewalk, you can see a grandma walking with 3 grandchildren, when all of a sudden, a man covering himself with a blanket comes and kidnaps one of the toddlers. The poor old lady, who probably hasn't ran in years, had to make the tough decision to leave her 2 other grandchildren and run after the kidnapper. You can also see a man get out of his car and run after the kidnapper as well. Since it was the middle of the day, lots of people saw this happening and they cornered him into a gas station. Then he set the toddler down and walked away like nothing even happened. He was later found by the police sleeping in the doorway of a store and he was arrested. This man passed away after being shot by a dog. 30-year-old Joseph Smith was sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's truck, and in the back seat was hunting gear, a rifle, and a dog. According to the police, the dog at the back was a canine which belonged to his friend, and it stepped on the rifle, firing at him, which killed him. 5 celebrities who turned down famous roles. The role of Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy was originally offered to Amanda Seyfried, but she turned it down because she thought the movie would be a flop. The role then went to Zoe Saldana. Steven Spielberg, the director of Jurassic Park, admitted that his first choice to play Dr. Alan Grant was Harrison Ford, but he passed on the opportunity for unknown reasons. Selena Gomez was originally supposed to play the lead role in Disney's Camp Rock, but she turned it down so it could go to her friend Demi Lovato. Rachel McAdams passed on the opportunity to play Andy Sachs in The Devil Wears Prada 3 times. The part eventually went to Anne Hathaway, who later admitted that she was 9th choice for the role. Drew Barrymore was originally casted to play Sidney Prescott in the Scream franchise, but had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. She does still appear in the film, but the lead went to Neve Campbell. This guy got stranded with no service and used a drone to save his life. One day, Casey Ryan decided to take a hike with his friend in the snowy mountains of the Willamette National Forest in Oregon. During their hike, they came across a van driver who was stuck in the snow. Ryan and his friend tried to dig out the van, but the conditions were too icy. They had no cell service and the temperature was starting to drop, so they were running out of options. Eventually, they came up with a genius plan to put a phone on the drone and fly it up high enough so that it would get cell service. So they wrote an SOS message to Ryan's wife, then put it on the drone and put it up in the air for around a minute so it would send. When they landed the drone, they were astonished to see that the message had actually went through. Search and rescue then arrived early the next morning to save the men. This woman lost out on $120,000 when she ate a potato chip. Danielle Sager is enjoying a bag of Walker's potato chips when she notices something interesting. One of the chips is shaped like a perfect symmetrical heart. Danielle thought it was cute, so she snapped the picture to send to her friends, then she ate it. But when her friends responded, she realized that she made a huge mistake. But before I tell you why, I found this app that lets you put 2 people together and figure out what their baby would look like. Just press the link in the comments to try it for yourself. The reason it was a huge mistake is because Walker's, the company that makes the potato chips, was holding a competition for their customers to find the best heart-shaped chip, and the prize was $120,000. Her friends told her not to eat the chip, but it was too late. 3 of the world's most luckiest people. This guy was using a pull-up bar when all of a sudden it broke. Luckily, it broke at the right time and he landed on his feet. This guy almost fell in the lake while trying to do a trick, but he ended up saving it and looking even cooler than what he was trying to do. And finally, this kid missed the hoop that he was aiming at, but managed to get it in the one beside him. What's even crazier is he managed to do the exact same thing his very next shot, but on the other side. This old lady fell while delivering pizza, and you won't believe what happened to her. The lady is a 72-year-old great-grandmother who works at Domino's, and one day while she was delivering pizza, she fell. The homeowner rushed outside to make sure she was okay, but the only thing she was worried about was that she damaged their food.
Sorry.
Are you hurt?
I ruined your food.
The lady used to work at a school as a lunch lady, but she took the job at Domino's Pizza because she needed the money. The homeowners felt terrible that she was working at the age that she is, and not because she wanted to, but because she had to. So they posted the video of her falling onto Facebook along with a link to a GoFundMe page. Just the next day, they went to Domino's and found her working there and told her that they made a GoFundMe page for her. Then they revealed that it made $235,000 and she was able to retire. Everyone laughed at the price of this building until they saw what was underneath. A $17.5 million secret lies underneath this building, which is 2 hours from Savannah, Georgia. The land that the building is on is 32 acres and it has caretakers, which may make you think that there's something important hidden under there, because why else would there be guards? The property also has a 100-yard shooting range for up to 4 people. And what's hidden underneath is a nuclear blast-proof bunker that could protect against the worst of the worst. It was built in 1969 by the US Army 45 feet underground in case of a nuclear emergency. At the time, it cost $7 million to make, which would be equivalent to $45 million today. Even though it's really old, in 2012 it was renovated. They also added a bunch of things like food in case there actually was an emergency, and it has the capacity to hold 20 people for a full year or 40 people for a short period of time. This 90-year-old woman lives out her birthday dream thanks to a biker gang. This is Barbara Morris, an elderly woman that lives in a nursing home in Manchester, England. Several years ago, Barbara told her children that if she lived to 90 years old, she had a birthday wish: to take a ride on a motorcycle like she did when she was younger. Barbara had figured that her children had forgot about her biker dreams, so she was stunned that on her 90th birthday, her son surprised her with a local biker gang and a Harley Davidson for her to ride. Barbara hopped on the back of the bike and rode with the 13 other bikers nearly 7 miles to a nearby pub. Her children describe her as having a daredevil spirit and nerves of steel, but for Barbara, she said she was just happy to feel wind blowing on her face. Hundreds of pounds of pasta were found dumped in the woods. This man was recently taking a walk in his neighborhood in Old Bridge, New Jersey, when he came across something unusual. Someone had dumped a massive amount of pasta in the woods. Literal mounds of spaghetti, elbow macaroni, and ziti. The pasta was uncooked, but rainwater had softened the noodles, making them appear to be cooked. It took 15 wheelbarrows to remove the estimated 500 pounds of pasta. The mystery of who dumped it and why remains a mystery, but some people in the community believe it was a resident attempting to clean out his deceased mother's house.
Here's 5 world records you didn't know existed. The most toothpicks in a beard. It took Joel 3 hours and 13 minutes to put 3,500 toothpicks in his beard. The longest hair on a teenager, which is 5 feet and 7 inches. The longest hula hoop spun, which is just over 17 feet in diameter. The tallest hat, which is 15 feet and 9 inches. And finally, the largest table tennis bat, which is over 11 feet tall and 6 feet long.
The strangest last meal requests on death row. Philip Workman's final request was to get a large vegetarian pizza delivered to a homeless person. But the prison denied doing that, so he ate nothing. On the day of his death, many people from around the world donated pizza to homeless shelters. David Leon Woods was on death row for 22 years before he was put to death. For his last meal, he chose a pizza and a birthday cake, which he shared with his family. But the strangest part is, his birthday wasn't for another 3 months after his death. John Wayne Gacy, otherwise known as the killer clown named Pogo, ate 12 fried shrimp, a bucket of KFC chicken, French fries, and a pound of strawberries.
People who gained real-life superpowers after an accident. Jason Padgett was a party animal who wasn't interested in mathematics at all. But one day at a party, he was hit in the head so hard that he got a concussion. The concussion caused him to become a mathematical genius. It made him learn fractal geometry, which he had never been taught before. When Derek Amato was 39 years old, he hit his head after diving into the swimming pool and was diagnosed with a concussion and 35% hearing loss. After that, Derek began to see black and white keys in his head, and out of nowhere, he began to play the piano like an expert. Ben McMahon was in a car accident in 2015 and fell into a coma for a week. When he woke up, he could speak perfect Chinese, even though he had only learned the basics as a child. Tony Caesarea was struck by lightning after making a call in a phone booth. Within a couple days, he was addicted to music, which he wasn't before. After trying a piano, he became a musical artist, composing his own music.
Here's how to survive a rip current. Rip currents are the leading cause of lifeguard rescues on the beach, and they're responsible for hundreds of deaths by drowning every year. So here's what to do if you ever find yourself in one. A rip is a strong and narrow current of water which moves directly away from shore. If you're on the beach, it often looks like a calm spot of water in between the waves. If you find yourself being carried away from shore in a rip current, your first step is to stay calm, because panicking will tire you out and you need energy to stay floating. If you're a strong swimmer, your next step will be to try swimming parallel to the shoreline until you escape. But if you're less confident in your ability to swim, you'll want to try and stay floating and get someone to help. Scientists discovered that 80 to 90% of rip currents travel in large circles. So if you can stay afloat above water, the current will most likely take you back to shore. The most important thing to remember is do not try and swim back to shore, because even the weakest rip current is stronger than the best Olympic swimmer. Here's how to survive a cone snail attack. First off, don't collect shells that stand out too much. The shell design of a cone snail sticks out way more to try and get people to pick it up, so they can then be attacked with its venomous sting. Make sure to wear protective footwear if you're walking along shallow parts of the tropical waters, because the cone snail often hides in the sand by the shore, then sneaks up on you and attacks you when you're not expecting it. If you're walking in the water, pay attention to what you feel, because the snail is capable of releasing insulin-based toxins, which when you're close by to it, it reduces your blood sugar level. This will make you feel dizzy, so if you're dizzy, get out of the water because you're about to be stung. Now, if you've been stung, stay calm and don't panic. When you get nervous, your blood flow will increase, spreading the venom across your whole body a lot faster. Keep pressure on the area to slow down the spread and head to the hospital as soon as possible. If you've been stung and you're nowhere close to a hospital, take advantage of every second, because there's no antidote for its venom, and it causes respiratory problems and muscle spasms due to the pain. 2 impossible places people were found. Firefighters in Arizona had been called to a house because there had been lots of reports of yelling coming from inside of the house. After investigating, they were shocked to find that the yelling was actually coming from inside of the chimney. It took 3 firefighters to pull out the man from the chimney, and he was actually the homeowner. He said that he accidentally locked the keys inside the house, so he thought he would try getting in through the chimney. Another fire department in Norway got called to help someone who was stuck in a public bathroom. When they got there, they searched the whole bathroom, but they couldn't find anyone until they saw 2 hands sticking out of a toilet. Apparently, the man accidentally dropped his phone inside the toilet, so when he went to go get it, he fell in. And inside the toilet is a giant hole that's only cleaned once a year, and he was in there for over an hour.
3 animals that saved human lives. One day at 4 in the morning, this parrot started squawking. Not because it was hungry, but because the laundry room was on fire. The loud noises from the parrot woke up its owners, then they ran outside and called the fire department. If it weren't for the parrot, their whole house could have been destroyed, and even worse yet, they could have been hurt badly. One winter night in Russia, someone heard a cat meowing outside their apartment, so they went to go and see it. When they got there, they realized it wasn't the cat making noises, it was actually a baby crying. If it weren't for the cat keeping the baby warm, it might not have survived in the cold. A 5-year-old named Amber Mason and her family traveled to Thailand for a vacation. While they were there, Amber became friends with a 4-year-old elephant. One morning when they were strolling the beach, an unexpected tsunami hit. The elephant rushed to the water to get Amber and pulled her to shore where her mother was waiting. If it weren't for the elephant, she could have drowned. 5 photos you'll have to look at twice. At first it looks like there's a giant pigeon, but it's actually just sitting on a ledge and the person's walking in the distance. At first it looks like there's a human dog, but the dog's actually sitting beside its owner. At first this looks like some weird looking cat, but it's actually just 2 cats laying in the exact same position on each side. At first it looks like this fish has an arm, but the fish just got too close to the camera. And finally, it looks like this person has a small head, but it's just the head from the person in front of them.
Cute animals that are actually dangerous, part 2. Slow lories are usually found in Southeast Asia. They're also the only venomous mammal on the earth. When they feel threatened, they release venom out of their elbows. Then they lick it to get it mixed with their saliva, and then bite their predator. And if it's done to a human, it can cause rashes, illness, allergic reactions, and even death.
3 times The Simpsons predicted the future. In a 2012 episode, Lady Gaga performed for the town hanging in midair. 5 years later, she flew off the Houston Energy Stadium roof in real life to perform for the Super Bowl halftime show. In 2008, they showed Homer trying to vote for Barack Obama in the election, but the machine kept changing his vote. 4 years later, a voting machine in Pennsylvania was removed because it kept changing people's votes from Barack Obama to his rival Mitt Romney. Finally, in 1994, a school bully wrote "Beat Up Martin" on his Apple Newton, which was a product before the iPhone was made, but it got translated to "Eat Up Martha." A few years later, when making the iPhone keyboard, they added the autocorrect feature and said it was inspired by this episode of The Simpsons. You can't call yourself a driver if you don't know these 3 secrets. If you get stuck in snow, sand, or mud, you should move the steering wheel from side to side to give the tires more room to maneuver, then put the vehicle in reverse to make even more space. Get the tire jack from the back of the vehicle, then raise it into the air so you can place branches or floor mats underneath the wheels. This will give the tires something to grip on, so now you can just drive out and you're free. Turn on the air conditioning even in the winter. Even if it's cold outside, you should turn on your air conditioning at least once a month for a few minutes, because this will prevent the system from deteriorating. If you notice the person in front of you is driving unsafe, then pay attention to their front wheels so you can anticipate their next move and not be surprised. This man donated half his liver to a stranger who only had 2 months to live, and you won't believe what happened next. One day when he was at work, he overheard a coworker that he barely knew talking about his cousin who only had 2 months to live. She had a liver disease and needed a transplant, but there's 119,000 people in line ahead of her. So unless she got a donor, she only had a few months to live. Christopher decided to go in and see if he was a match, and it turns out he was, so he donated half of his liver. The girl's name is Heather Kruger, and they didn't get to meet until after the surgery. But as soon as they did meet, they instantly fell in love and started dating, and then 2 years later they got married. 4 bizarre Japanese inventions. Capsule hotels became popular in Japan because they're ideal to stay for 1 or 2 nights. They're barely 2 meters long and 1 meter high and cost between $25 and $50 a night. They also include a television and Wi-Fi. They've also created a very strange silicone device that supposedly trains the muscles in your face and makes it slimmer. I think I need one. Apparently spreading butter is difficult for the Japanese, so they created a butter grater. It softens the butter a bit so you could spread it with ease. Now for $70 you could buy a pillow shaped as a woman's leg in a dress. And for women they made a pillow of a man's chest with an arm so you could rest your head in. This 17-year-old goes to her friend's house for a sleepover, but then something terrible happens. In June 2008, when Cody was at his friend's house for a sleepover, his mom called him to check on him, but he didn't answer, so then she got worried. Cody ended up calling her back later, but by the sound of his voice, his mom could tell that something was wrong, so she called 911 immediately. At the hospital, they told him that he had suffered from a stroke. They then had to send him by a helicopter to a special medical institute in another state for treatment. Every single second that passed was crucial. When he got there, he had emergency surgery because he had a lot of swelling in his brain. They had to wait 3 weeks to see the results from the surgery to see if Cody would make it. They said it would take Cody a long time to speak again, but he was able to speak again just 1 month after surgery, and his first words were, "I love you, Mom, and thanks to the surgeons for saving my life." He had to do rehab to learn how to do many things again, but after 2 years, he was fully recovered. People versus animals. This man brings his young daughter fishing for catfish, but when he goes to reel in his catch, they get an unexpected surprise.
Oh my god! That's a big gator, buddy!
This mama moose charges at an unexpected cyclist. This man tries to ride a pig, but the pig said no. This man is quick to give up on his own advice while handling a lion. And finally, this boy in Australia was just trying to ride on his scooter when he came across a magpie that tried to run him off the road. You won't believe what this man actually did. Nico Jenkins is an American born on September 16th, 1986. At the age of 15, he stole a car and the cops caught him, and he was then sentenced to 7 years in prison. But because of his bad behavior, it ended up being 10.5 years. After being released in 2013, not even a month had gone by before he turned from a thief to a murderer, committing 4 murders with a shotgun. He confessed to the murders during an interview with the police. He said the reason he executed them was done as a sacrifice to the ancient Egyptian god Apopis. In April 2014, he was found guilty of the 4 murders by a judge. He was also ordered to be put in a psychiatric hospital, but it didn't go through, so he was treated by doctors in prison. In May 2017, he was sentenced to death and 450 years in prison by 3 judges. In 2020, his appeal was denied, and to this day, his death sentence hasn't been carried out. A musical instrument that can be played without touching it. The theremin was invented by accident in 1920 by the Russian musician and scientist Leon Theremin. He was creating a device that could measure the density of gases, but realized what he made produced sound that changed according to your hand position. The instrument consists of a box with 2 metal antennas on the sides and oscillators that control the frequency and amplitude of sound. The electrical signals produced by the instrument are then sent to a loudspeaker. The first antenna is on the right, which controls the pitch. The closer you place your hand, the sharper the sound is. The farther you move your hand away from the antenna, the louder it will be. The theremin has been used several times to create themes for television shows and was played in the 70s by Jimmy Page, who's the founder of the Led Zeppelin band. This is a real scary McDonald's customer service story. A young girl who lived with her 3-year-old sister and her mother experienced a very frightening moment. One of her mother's cousins worked at a McDonald's near where they lived, so she often stays there after school while she waits for her mother to pick her up. One day while she was studying at McDonald's and taking care of her little sister who was playing in the playground, 2 strange-looking men walked in. One of them suddenly approached the girl and started asking her a bunch of questions.
but she was really scared and didn't really answer them. A few minutes later, she looked out to see her sister, but she wasn't there. She quickly got up to look for her and realized that the other man was in the parking lot trying to get her sister into the car while she was kicking and screaming. The girl ran to her mom's cousin and told him to call 911, but the man who was taking her sister gave up when he saw several employees approaching him and left the girl on the ground. If she hadn't acted quickly, she may never have seen her sister again.
Times when actors almost quit during filming. Jim Carrey played the Grinch in the movie and it wasn't easy. Plus, to get the role, it was just as hard. In order to get it, Jim Carrey had to impress Dr. Seuss's widow for the film to even be made. But the part that was the hardest for him was the makeup that he had to wear, which almost made him quit multiple times. Before each day of filming, he had to spend 2 hours getting the makeup put on, and then at the end of the day, another hour to take it off. He had to do this for 92 days during the filming of his parts. He also had to wear these yellowish eye contacts, and they were so painful that they had to hire a military torture expert to train him.
No one came to his birthday party, so Chuck E. Cheese did this. It was Evan's 4th birthday and he celebrated in Chuck E. Cheese. His mom prepared a bunch of candy, a birthday cake, big balloons, and a bunch more. She also sent out 30 invitations to his friends. Evan was so excited, so they left early to play games with his friends before the party. He was the first one to get there, so he waited at the door for his friends to arrive. He waited for a long time, but no one showed up. One of the workers had to go to the bathroom to avoid crying because of how bad she felt for the boy. Evan and his parents decided to just go home. After a couple of days, the same worker posted on Facebook asking if anyone would be willing to give Evan a present. Within 3 to 4 days, she had over a dozen presents to give to him. She contacted Evan's mom and said that the store had a surprise for Evan. So they drove over and she surprised Evan with all the presents. The worker said that seeing Evan smile was the only thing she wanted that day.
This man lived without a heart for 555 days. Stan Larkin was a strong and healthy 25-year-old, until one day he suddenly collapsed while he was playing basketball. He was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with a rare heart condition. In November of 2014, he had to have his heart removed and replaced with an artificial one. If you saw him out in public, to the average person, you would think there's nothing different with him. But inside his backpack, he actually had a device that was keeping him alive. Inside was the power source to his artificial heart keeping him alive, so he had to bring it with him everywhere he went. He survived with it for 555 days until one day he finally got to receive his new heart. Here's why Iceland is the safest country in the world. First of all, the crime rate is so low that the police don't even carry guns. The SWAT team does carry them, but they barely have to use them because the average murder rate per year is 0 to 1.5. They also have barely any harmful animals. So that means no mosquitoes, no ticks, no bears, no snakes, no poisonous spiders, and things like that. No one that lives there has a bodyguard, not even the president. Parents leave their toddlers outside in strollers to nap. They say that babies usually fall asleep in less than 1 minute due to the cool and fresh air. And finally, the fastest speed limit they have is 90 kilometers per hour or 55 miles per hour. 5 genius products that were invented by accident. The Post-it was invented by Dr. David Spencer, who was trying to make a really strong adhesive. But what he actually did was the exact opposite. A weak adhesive that sticks lightly to surfaces. Popsicles were invented by an 11-year-old boy when he accidentally left a cup of lemonade outside overnight. He had left the stirring stick inside it and the liquid froze around it. Play-Doh was originally invented as a wallpaper cleaner until it became a children's toy. Tea bags were invented to carry samples of tea, but customers found them useful, letting them soak inside of hot water. And finally, bubble wrap. It was originally invented to be used as a 3D wallpaper, but when that failed, the inventors decided to start marketing it as a packing material. Is it dangerous to tickle a stingray? You've most likely seen this viral video before of a man tickling a stingray, and it appears like the stingray likes it since he's laughing at it, but here's what an expert had to say.
It is not safe for the animal at all because of the fact they're animals that belong in the water. They breathe in the water. If you have them on land for too long, they're going to have issues that are based off oxygen depravity.
Dangerous things scientists did to themselves. Henry Smolinski was tired of working his job as an engineer, so he decided to quit and pursue his dream, which was to make the world's first flying car available for anyone in the world to purchase. His plan was to take a Ford Petna and put it together with the tail and wings of a Cessna Skymaster plane. After a bunch of successful test flights, the public launch was only a few months away. But one day, when Henry and his co-founder was doing further testing, they came crashing down. Due to bad welds and bad locking mechanisms, the wings failed and they crashed. Unfortunately, everyone in the flying car passed away. I bet you won't be able to find me in this group of people. I'm not there right now, but I'm about to be. But what I want you guys to do is close your eyes and I'm gonna count down from 3, then open them and look for me. All right, 3, make sure your eyes are closed. 2, last warning. 1. Keep your eyes closed and I'm gonna tell you when to open them. Okay, try and find me. I'm gonna give you a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Here I am, baby. You can only like and subscribe if you found me.
People with real superpowers. Tim Cridlin feels no physical pain whatsoever. He doesn't feel needles in his skin. He doesn't feel high and low temperatures, and basically anything else a normal person would feel. Gino Martino, or better known as Hammerhead, has the ability to break concrete block, iron bars, and baseball hats with his head. And he even showed that he could drop a bowling ball from 5 meters and land on his head. Natalia Demkina has extraordinary vision. Her eyesight allows her to see everything that normal people could see, but she also has X-ray vision, so she could identify diseases just by looking at a person. Raj Mohan Nair can endure an electrical shock with the force of a few amperes. And to give you an example, a normal person can only endure a few milliamps before dying. Finally, Liu Thao Lin is the Magnet Man. He can attract metal objects to his body, and he can hold up to 80 pounds of items. Apparently, it's a sticky property in his skin, and is an ability that may be hereditary. The deadliest foods people actually eat. Fugu is one of the deadliest dishes out there. In Japan, people usually eat it as a test of bravery, because the toxin in the pufferfish can leave you paralyzed for the rest of your life. In Asia, some cultures eat raw monkey brains. Rather than killing you, it could lead you with a severe infection. The brain of an infected monkey can transmit a disease that is uncurable. Casu Marzu is one of Italy's most traditional cheeses. Despite its ban for causing side effects, to make it you set it outside uncovered and allow cheese flies to hatch eggs inside it. The eggs then hatch into maggots which eat away at your stomach. Hidden secrets in everyday items that you didn't know about. Have you ever wondered why doorknobs are made out of brass or some sort of alloy metal? This is because those materials help prevent bacteria from spreading. If you take the lid off your cup and place it underneath, it fits perfectly as a coaster. Have you ever wondered why there's a hole in plane windows? The hole is in the middle pane of the 3 window panes. It takes off pressure from the outer pane so the window doesn't break. Gas pump hoses are attached by magnets, so if you forget to take out the hose, the pump won't go with you. The number on the side of lotion tells you how long the product will last so you don't damage your skin. The different colors on the bottom of toothpaste tubes actually mean something. Blue means it's made with natural resources and medicine. Green means it's only made with natural resources. Red means it's made with natural resources and some chemical compositions. And black means it's made with pure chemicals. The weirdest World War II weapons that you've never heard about. The Kremlov periscope rifle. It's originally an STG-44, but modified with 2 accessories. A periscope and a bent barrel which could rotate up to 90 degrees. The purpose of this gun is to allow shooters to stay in cover while still being able to shoot. The Schwerer Gustav cannon is the largest artillery piece built to this day. It could only be transported by train tracks and needed 2,500 people to place the tracks. It also had to be assembled and deassembled each time, which took another 250 people 3.5 days to assemble. The shells it shot weighed over 7 tons and could travel over 30 miles long. Unexplained photos that have finally been solved, part 1. In the 1960s, this picture was taken and everyone thought Bigfoot was in the forest. But everyone later found out that it was just a man practicing for his role in a movie. This photo was taken over a mall in Nigeria and everyone thought it was some mysterious new creature. But it was actually just someone playing with a kite. In 2008, someone took a picture of this creature because they'd never seen it before. But it turned out to be a half-decomposed raccoon. Like, comment, and share for part 2. Here's the only way to survive a grenade blast. The first thing you want to do is turn the other direction and get at least 15 feet away. Then lay on your stomach with the bottom of your feet pointing at the grenade. This will reduce your chances of getting hit by the fragments. But if you do get hit, it will be the bottom of your shoes instead of your skin. Now if there's a grenade in the water with you, don't swim deeper, get out. Swimming deeper will cause the blast of the grenade to compress your lungs and cause serious damage.
5 Photoshop fails that are so bad it's hard to believe that they were missed. On this menu, they photoshopped in peas on rice. In this picture in a magazine, they removed the umbrellas, but they forgot to remove the reflection in the water. I don't really think that's how you're supposed to use a selfie stick. In this image on Amazon, it looks like they added in arms. And finally, in this ad, they put a family on a couch sitting in a car watching a movie. This 7-year-old girl saves herself from a creepy man. Emmy McCardle was laying in her front yard when a vehicle drove by. The car's window then rolled down and a man yelled hello. The girl looked up, then immediately ran towards her front door. While she was running, the man asked her if she wanted a bicycle, and this is what she said.
No.
Later in an interview, she said he seemed like a tricky man and was taught to stay away from them.
This boy passed away in a car crash, then he was brought back to life, and what he said will shock you. Landon and his parents were in the car, then all of a sudden they felt a strong force hit them. It was an ambulance going to the hospital that crashed into them. Unfortunately, his dad passed away on impact, but his mom was able to be stabilized just in time. The paramedics didn't know that Landon was still in the car until they saw a shoe sticking out. He was rushed to the hospital where his heart stopped twice. The doctors then told his mom that he would survive. When he woke up, he said that he saw his dad in heaven. He also said that he saw 2 of his relatives, and lastly, he said that he saw 2 of his mom's other children. His mom was confused at first, but then remembered that she had 2 miscarriages before he was even born. But the part that shocked her the most is that she never told that to Landon because he was too young to understand.
The most genius design ideas. This lamppost holds up an umbrella for people sitting on the bench when it's raining. This cat bed is shaped as honey spilling out of a jar. This sidewalk had a crack in the cement, so someone filled it with a glass portrait. This doctor has an IV bag full of water to water the plant. Here's what the doorknob looks like at this person's butcher. This wet floor sign is shaped as a banana peel. Now before I show you the best one, I found this app that lets you live stream without any requirements like a certain amount of followers. If you want to try it out and meet some new friends, just press the link in the comments. Finally, this sponge holder is shaped like SpongeBob. A bank accidentally deposited $37 million into this lady's bank account, and you won't believe what she did with it. One day, a lady named Ruth went online to look at her bank account and she noticed a bunch of money that wasn't hers. She then tried calling the bank to figure out how the money got there and who it belonged to, but they were closed. She then screenshotted her bank account and sent the pictures to her husband to see if he knew what was going on, but he had no clue. So the next day when the bank was open, she called again and they said that they made an error. So she got in her vehicle, drove to the bank, and gave back every single dollar that wasn't hers. Good thing that it was an honest person, because if it was someone else, they may not have returned it. The most bizarre coincidence in history. A few years ago, a man named Paul was paying for some groceries when he noticed something strange. One of his bills had the name Esther on it, which is the name of his girlfriend. So he decided not to pay with it and put it back in his pocket. Later that night, he wrapped up the bill to give it to his girlfriend as a joke. The next week, they went on a date and he gave it to her, and when she opened it, she was shocked. She quickly put it away and Paul was confused, but he let it slide. 2 years later, Paul and Esther got married. Then one day, when they were packing up to move into their new place, Paul saw the bill and decided to ask her about it. It turns out it was her who wrote her name on the bill before paying with it, hoping that one day the bill would return to her, and if it did, that would be the person who she marries. Since they had only been dating for a few weeks when she was given the bill, she didn't want to tell Paul the story in case it scared him away. This lady noticed small handprints on a basement window, and you won't believe what they found inside of it. Marcos was a 30-year-old man living in a small town in Mexico. Every few weeks, he would pack a small bag and ask his neighbors to watch his house while he went on a trip. But he would never tell them where he was going and sometimes leave for weeks. One time after he returned from a trip, people started noticing he was acting different. Whenever he would talk to someone, he was really nervous and jittery. One night, when a lady was out for a walk, she noticed something strange about Marcos's house. His basement window had small handprints smudged on them as if someone was trying to escape. That night, the lady wasn't able to sleep because she couldn't stop thinking about the handprints. So she decided to call the police anonymously. In the basement, the police found a small bedroom with toys, food, and a small closet. And when they looked inside the closet, they found a young boy hiding. It turns out that the young boy named David was taken by the local gang. And Marcos, who was also a part of the gang, felt bad for David, so he helped him escape. At first, he hid him at a farm and brought him food and clothes every few weeks. Then he decided to bring David to his house so that the gang wouldn't come looking for him. Since David was found, he was adopted and is now living in another town. This urban legend from the 1960s will shock you. One day, when a girl was driving home at night, she noticed a truck following her. The vehicle kept flashing their high beams at her and eventually ran into her vehicle. When she finally got home, she ran as fast as she could from her vehicle to her house so she could call 911. But so did the man following her. He pulled in behind her and got out of his truck, but then she realized he wasn't trying to hurt her, he was trying to help her. She then heard him yell, "There's someone in the back of your car." Every time the man in the back of her car went to attack her, the guy driving the truck would flash his high beams, which would make the man duck down. They ran inside and locked the doors, then called the police. This old lady started yelling at a kid selling candy, then one man decided it was enough. Two siblings from California decided they wanted to earn more money. So they thought of a few ideas, but they decided on a candy business. They decided that they were each gonna buy a box of candy, then sell them outside their local grocery store. On some days, they would sell a ton of candy, but on others, they would only sell 1 or 2 pieces. Everything was going well for them until one day when an old lady approached them. She became very aggressive and started yelling at them for no reason. The kids went silent and didn't say a word while the lady embarrassed them in front of the store. As she was yelling, a man overheard her and decided that it was enough. He walked over to them, and what he ended up doing made the lady's jaw drop. But before I tell you what he did, I found this app that tells you your celebrity lookalike, and apparently I look like Zach King. If you want to find out who you look like, just press the link in the comments. He ended up telling the lady that she had no right to be yelling at the kids like that, and he also told the kids that he would buy an entire box of candy and handed them $100. Girls made fun of him, so he got the ultimate revenge. One day, a teenage boy was at his favorite restaurant, and there was a group of girls sitting in the booth behind him. They seemed fine at first and causing no trouble, but after they left, a waitress noticed that one of them forgot their glasses on the table. So she asked the boy if he could chase after them and give them back to her. When he got outside, he noticed them driving in the parking lot and started waving at them. All they did was start laughing at him, then one of them gave him the finger and they drove off. After this, the boy was really ticked off, so he just threw the glasses in a trash can outside. Then a few minutes later, the girls returned looking for the glasses. They asked the waitress, then the waitress told them to ask the boy, so they did. And he told them he threw them in the trash. So the girls went outside to look for them, but they couldn't find them, so they came back inside and asked the boy which trash can. He then shrugged and gave them the finger.
3 Secret Service tactics that are insane. The president's main way of transportation is called the Beast. It's a Cadillac limousine with over 7 tons of armor, which is 8 inches thick. It can defend against gunfire and explosives, but it never travels alone. In the line of vehicles, there's a black van that holds the counter-assault team, and in total there's 12 vehicles that each cost over $1 million. When chefs are cooking food for the president, every single one of their movements is monitored by an agent to make sure they're not poisoning the food. When the president travels, chefs go with him to personally prepare his food. He doesn't eat any food that's gifted to him, and when he buys food at a restaurant, he doesn't actually eat it. It's usually just for a photo. The president gets lots of online threats, and even if it's just a joke, they investigate every single aspect of that person's life. Their neighbors, friends, and employees can all be interviewed. They do this to see how serious the threat is, then decide if they need to take action on the person or not. One day, a teacher named Nancy noticed a student wasn't acting like he normally did, so she decided to ask him if everything was okay. He started talking about his father, and what he said broke his teacher's heart. His father, named Daryl Peterson, was very ill. Both of his kidneys were only working at 20%, and he needed a transplant as soon as possible. The reason the boy was sad is because he never knew when it would be the last time he seen his father. His teacher felt terrible that this was happening to one of her students, so she decided to phone his dad. She wanted to help the family, and not just by doing something like offering to take care of his kid, but she offered him one of her kidneys. It turned out that the two were compatible and they went through with the transplant. Now Nancy isn't just his teacher, but also his hero. The ending of this sad story will shock you. A man married a beautiful girl that he loved very much. One day she developed a skin disease, which made her slowly lose her beauty. The next day her husband left for a tour. When he was returning, he got into an accident and lost his eyesight. But their married life continued like usual. As the days passed, she lost her beauty even more. But since the man was blind, he didn't know this, and continued to love her. But one day she suddenly passed away. The man was very sad and wanted to leave the town. But someone asked him, "How will you be able to walk alone since your wife always helped you?" He then said, "I'm not blind. I was acting because if she knew I could see her skin condition, it would have pained her even more than the disease. So I pretended to be blind to keep her happy." Mythical creatures people have seen in real life. For a long time, the giant squid was considered a mythical creature that whipped the boats of sailors. But thanks to the advance in science, in 2004 a giant squid was found in its natural habitat. In 1967, 2 explorers filmed the creature walking in a Californian forest, which to this day is suspected to be Bigfoot. The chupacabra is a mythical creature that supposedly sucks the blood out of cattle, but there's a farmer who claimed he killed it. Mermaids are described as enchanting creatures. It is said that through their singing they attract sailors. Many claim to have taken pictures with them, all the way from Mexico and Jamaica to the coast of some African countries. The 5 worst advertising fails. Snow White is on this package for apples, but I don't know if I'd trust them because in the movie she got poisoned by one. On the box for Connect 4, it shows that it includes blue discs to block your opponent, and it shows the red player using one when they could have just won. On this ad for this massager, it shows that you could use it anywhere, including in the office, at home, and I guess even while you're driving with your eyes closed. This store was having a sale on computers, but apparently these PCs won't last long. But what they were really trying to say is that they'll sell out fast. Now before I show you the worst one, I found this app that tells you your celebrity lookalike, and apparently I look like Robert Downey Jr. Just click the link in the comments to try it and let me know who you get. Finally, on this ad for unbreakable wine glasses, it shows a kid holding one.
Here are some of the most popular snacks in different countries. Argentina is the world's #1 consumer of alfajores, which are sandwich cookies stuffed with dulce de leche and dipped in chocolate. Honey butter chips were so popular when they first released in Korea in 2014 that they sold out everywhere in just a matter of months and inspired competitors to make similar flavors. In Africa, people snack on bitlong, which is a salted and cured meat like jerky but way easier to chew. Bomba is a puffed corn peanut butter snack that's popular in Israel. Stroop waffles are thin waffle cookies with a caramel filling, first sold in the Netherlands but now sold all over the world. And finally, Tim Tams are a biscuit cookie and staple in Australia. It even inspired the creation of the Tim Tam Slam, where you bite the corners of the cookie, then use it as a straw to drink a hot cup of tea, then finish it off by eating the melted cookie. The police didn't take this lady seriously, and what happened next will shock you. Michael and Shauna had been dating for 2 years, but soon Shauna realized that their relationship was turning into a toxic one. He would always tell her what to do and not let her decide for herself. She then started talking to Cook, who was her ex-boyfriend. Shauna had regained her happiness by talking to Cook, so she broke up with Michael. But then Michael started following her around and begging her to get back together with him. She tried to avoid him, but he kept showing up at stores and restaurants that she was at. One day when she was cleaning her bike, she found a tracking device, so she decided to file file a police report against Michael, but the cops didn't do anything about it. Michael started threatening Shauna in person and on the phone, so she called the cops again, but instead of taking action, they made her pay a fine for wasting their time. One day when Shauna was home alone, Michael broke in and took her life. If the police would have taken her seriously, she may still be alive.
The 5 most illegal products on Pawn Stars. Number 1, an antique gun desk. This type of weapon is classed as a novelty weapon because of its low capacity, rarity, and difficulty in finding ammunition. But the one showed on the TV show had 1 round of ammunition left in it. And to make it legal, you either have to deactivate the device or make it unusable. Number 2, a turtle shell guitar. The shells of turtles are made of 60 interconnected bones. They're so strong that they started making guitars out of them until it was illegal. Number 3, a German spy camera. It was the first spy camera manufactured by the Minox company and was designed by Walter Zapp in 1936. Number 4, Penn State University orange bull ring. Penn State items are highly wanted, but in this case the engraving was erased, making it illegal to buy and sell. And number 5, a Tyrian shekel coin. Tyre was the most important city in Phoenicia, which is now southern Lebanon. Its coins were given out from 130 BC to 70 AD, and apparently the one taken to the show was stolen.
These are some of the biggest mistakes in fast food history. In 2015, Burger King offered a limited edition Halloween Whopper with a black burger bun. The reviews for the burger were actually pretty good, but it turns out that the food dye in the bun had one unfortunate consequence. It caused customers to have bright green poop. Chipotle's first attempt at queso was a huge failure. Customers complained that it was watery and flavorless, and the negative press caused Chipotle's stock to drop. Fortunately, Chipotle dropped the old queso for a better one. In the 1980s, McDonald's rolled out the McSpaghetti, but customers had no interest in eating pizza and spaghetti from a burger place, so McDonald's discontinued the item. Finally, we have Taco Bell's seafood salad. Because of the success from McDonald's Filet-O-Fish, lots of fast food chains wanted to try seafood as well, but Taco Bell's crab, shrimp, and whitefish salad was a huge flop, and it was removed from the menu after several reports of food poisoning. Rihanna's sign language interpreter went viral for her Super Bowl performance. Justina Miles is a 20-year-old nursing student from Philadelphia. She performed during the pre-shows as well, but her performance during the halftime show is what went viral. This man is spending 100 days underwater. Joseph Deturi, or Dr. Deep Sea, is a former US Navy diver who's been living underwater since March 1st. He plans to stay in a small shelter 22 feet below sea level for 100 days, breaking the previous world record, which was 73 days. But his real goal is to collect data and get people excited for scientific research. His underwater pod features a small kitchen, a living room kitchen, and small bunks for sleeping. He communicates to the outside world using his Instagram page. He can receive visitors and also plans to host a class field trip. But there are also many challenges. He has zero access to sunlight, and not to mention the bone-crushing pressure of the sea. Do you think Dr. Deep Sea will make it 100 days? This is the NFL's most wanted man. 89-year-old Dion Rich has snuck into 33 Super Bowls. In 1978, he even managed to carry the Cowboys coach off the field when they won. It all started when he owned a bar which was a popular drinking spot for NFL players. This allowed him to overhear where the players' bus would arrive at the stadium. So he arrived there at the same time as them and followed them inside. The NFL has reportedly spent thousands of dollars on private investigators to stop this man from getting in. 3 bizarre things found in pools. A lady staying at a resort was going down to the pool for a morning aerobics class when she saw a 5-foot crocodile in the pool. She phoned the rangers to come and get it, and when they took it out, they couldn't find a marking on it, which means it must have been wild. In California, the police were chasing a car, but it was driving so crazy that they had to stop for safety reasons. The car was later found in a pool, but the driver was nowhere to be seen, so they think he must have ran to avoid the charges. And lastly, one morning a family woke up to a hippo in their pool. Their pool went from crystal clear and clean to dark green and dirty. But the father is a safari director, so he's used to seeing animals like that. They said the hippo stayed there for 10 days before it finally left. 5 photos you'll have to look at twice. First off, in this picture, it looks like the person only has half a body. But the reason it looks like that is because they're just holding up a mirror. At first, it looks like the camel wearing the red is standing on the camel wearing the blue, but the camel in the red is just farther back in the photo. It looks like this rock is falling from the sky and about to hit the raccoon, but it's actually just a rock in a lake, and the lake has a reflection of the sky. At first, this might look like a painting, but it's actually just a swan swimming in water. And finally, we have this building that's almost floating, and to be honest, I don't even know what's going on here. Here's why they're called killer whales. No fatal attacks on humans have been documented in the ocean, but they're a huge threat to sea life. When you think of the top ocean predator, you probably think of the great white shark. But it's actually the killer whale because they have a diverse diet and they eat everything. They hunt in packs like wolves and eat everything from very small fish to big sharks. This April Fool's joke leaves a teacher shocked. This teacher has a rule where if your phone rings in class, you have to answer it on speaker. So for April Fool's, a student decided to get her friend to call her pretending to be a nurse and tell her that she was pregnant. And the teacher's reaction is priceless.
That's okay.
I'm very sorry.
I've been expecting this, and I already know what I'm going to name the baby. The first name will be April, and the middle name will be Fools.
5 close calls caught on camera. A fan falls from the ceiling, luckily landing right in the middle of people sitting on the floor. This car tries to pass a trailer and nearly runs into the oncoming traffic. A guy on a motorcycle nearly collides with a horse and a buggy crossing the road. This woman runs across the street and is nearly hit by a truck before slipping, falling, and just barely missing the back of the truck's tire. Have you ever wondered why people take ice baths? Well, here's why. Ice baths, or cold plunges, have become a lot more popular lately, and I've even started taking them. Lots of athletes have started doing them because when you get in cold water, your blood vessels get smaller. Then when you get out of the water, due to the temperature change, your blood vessels quickly reopen, which flushes your muscle metabolic waste products. And in regular terms, that means it speeds up muscle recovery from workouts. A study from 2016 showed that people who took cold showers were 30% less likely to call in sick to work, which means it helps support your immune system to fight off colds. There's a bunch more things that it does, like increase your blood circulation, but my favorite is it increases your dopamine levels by 250%. And for those of you that don't know what dopamine is, that's the hormone that makes you feel good. People who did crazy things to avoid being caught. Frank Abagnale Jr. was a con artist and imposter who managed to avoid the law for many years by pretending to be various professionals, including a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. He even managed to pass an exam and become an attorney for a little while before he got caught. His story was later turned into a movie and is called Catch Me If You Can. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was a Mexican drug lord who managed to avoid being caught by using tunnels and secret passageways to avoid detection. He was eventually caught and is currently serving life in prison. Finally, Edward Snowden was a former National Security Agency contractor who leaked classified information about the agency's surveillance activities. To avoid prosecution, he fled to Russia where he was granted protection. He currently lives in Moscow, but he remains a controversial person. 5 huge pop songs that were originally written for other artists. Pharrell originally wrote the song Happy for CeeLo Green, but studio executives wanted Pharrell to sing it himself, and it went on to become a mega hit. The Beyoncé breakup song called Irreplaceable has distinct country vibes because it was originally meant for a country singer like Shania Twain or Faith Hill. Selena Gomez's first song called Come and Get It was a huge hit that started her music career, but the song was originally written for Rihanna, who passed on it. And speaking of Rihanna, her hit song called Umbrella was written for Britney Spears in 2007, but both her and Mary J. Blige passed on it. And finally, Baby One More Time is how the world was introduced to Britney Spears, but it was first offered to the girl group called TLC.
Homeowners who spent a fortune just for revenge. A couple that was in the process of a divorce in the 1920s made an agreement where the husband had to build a house for her that was identical to the house they were living in, but she didn't specify the place where she wanted it. So the man had it built in a saltwater marsh that was in the middle of nowhere. In a Seattle neighborhood, neighbors got into an argument about a small plot of land. The owner of the land was approached by his neighbor, who offered him a small amount of money for the land so he could grow a garden. For some reason, the landowner was so offended that he built a house. In the end, the neighbor moved because the house obstructed his view. In Argentina, Karina Cavana was rejected from her partner's mother, so in revenge, she set out to build a house that would obstruct the view of the Basilica of the Blessed Sacrament from the home of the family that rejected her.
After 93 days under the sea, this man is 10 years younger. You might remember Joe DeTurri from one of my previous videos. He's the former US Navy diver and biomedical engineer who locked himself in an underwater pod for nearly 100 days to document the effects of pressurization on humans. And as it turns out, the effects are pretty good. After returning to land, scientists and doctors determined that this experiment set his biological clock back approximately 10 years. Living in a pressurized cabin triggered a 20% growth in the length of his telomeres, which are what keeps your DNA from breaking down. As we age, our telomeres generally shorten, but Turi was able to reverse the effects. His body's stem cell count grew by nearly 1,000%, and he experienced a 60% increase in deep restorative sleep. More research is needed to fully understand the effects of living under the sea, but it could be the key to aging backwards. This woman needed a new kidney, and her dog found a donor. 44-year-old Lucy Humphrey had battled her whole adult life with lupus. And in 2017, the doctors told her that she needs a new kidney, and that if she didn't find one in the next 5 years, she could die. After hearing this news, Lucy and her husband decided to take a much-needed vacation to the beach along with their 2 Doberman dogs. While at the beach, one of their dogs named Indy kept running over to another person at the beach who was crocheting. The third time the dog ran over, Lucy and her husband went and apologized. The 3 of them then started talking, and Lucy told them that she had just joined the kidney donation registry. The 2 of them then exchanged numbers, and 1 blood test later revealed that these 2 women were a perfect match. The odds of this are 1 in 22 million. In the end, Lucy got her new kidney and remains friends with the donor. This is the scariest elevator in the world. It's located in Prague, and it never stops moving. It goes in a continuous loop, and you have to get on and get off quickly or else you'll miss your floor. And even though it's called the elevator of death, there has been no accidents. Here's how to survive if you get stuck in quicksand. First off, there's no need to panic because it's actually almost impossible to drown in quicksand. Your body would stop at your waist since quicksand is 2 times more dense than a human body. So firstly, get rid of any backpack or gear that you're wearing to make it easier to get out. Then start wiggling your legs to loosen up the sand so that water can trickle down to make your feet and legs slide out easier. Next, you'll want to lay down on your back and start doing a backstroke until your feet come out of the sand. Then stay on your back and start rolling as fast as you can to get out of the quicksand. 5 secrets you didn't know about everyday items. I think everyone knows that the metal part on a tape measure is so you could hook it onto things and measure it. And there's also a small hole that you could hook onto nails to measure as well. But what most people don't know is that on the side there's a sharp edge that's meant to mark the thing that you're measuring so you don't have to use a pencil. You may have noticed this small indent on the bottom of most bottles, and it actually has a purpose. Most bottles have a logo on them, and companies want the logo to be in the same spot on each bottle. So it holds each bottle in the same position while the machine applies the artwork. Most people's cabinets have a space underneath them, and it's not just for looks. It's called a toe kick, and it lets you stand closer to the counter, and also so when you open them, they don't hit your feet. A long time ago, when typers used typewriters, they got so good at their job that they started typing too fast and would cause the arms to cross over and stop working. So they scattered the letters around to make it harder for people to type as fast.
Animals you should never touch. The sting of the bolodan is so painful that it could cause nausea, vomiting, and even heart problems. People who have gotten stung by this ant say the same is similar to if you got shot by a bullet. The catmoth caterpillar looks really friendly, but I would recommend that you don't touch it, because through their hairs they release a poison that can cause vomiting, weakness, and shivering. The Japanese giant hornet is so dangerous that if you touch it, it could kill you. The venom from the stinger can destroy human tissues to the point where it makes you walk with difficulty. Another highly venomous animal is the blue-ringed octopus. If you see one of these, get away quickly, because even though they're small, its venom can result in nausea, respiratory and heart problems, or even death if you don't treat it within a few minutes. And finally, the box jellyfish has been called the most venomous creature in the world. Its venom kills so fast that there's nothing you can do about it.
This is a sunfish. They're one of the largest fish in the ocean and also one of the most useless. One reason is because they can't swim since none of their fins move. And because of this, they're often found stuck on the surface, flipped over sideways. When they're there, pelicans come and pick off some of the 40 different types of parasites that live on their bodies. They actually do have the cells to make a movable fin, but the only problem is the fin doesn't grow out of their body, it grows inside of their body. Their teeth are also fused together so their mouth stays open, and the only thing that they can eat since they're so slow is jellyfish. If you see mold on your bread, don't eat the rest of it. You've probably at some point in your life found mold on bread and decided to cut it off and eat the rest of it. Well, by doing this, it doesn't mean the rest of it is free from mold. Because mold is like fungus. If you could see the mold, then underneath, there's a bunch of tiny hidden roots called hyphae. And those roots release spores called mycotoxins, which can sometimes cause diseases in humans. So by eating the good part, there's a chance that it can still be moldy. This dad loses it after finding out what the babysitter did to his daughter. Jason Weshy, the father of 3-year-old Hannah, is a hardworking man, and some days he just can't get everything done that he wants to while looking after his daughter. So he decided to look around for a babysitter, and he got recommended one by a friend. The 35-year-old babysitter named Lindsay had been looking after his daughter for a few months now, when one day she phoned 911 to report that Hannah had fallen to the ground unconscious. Jason rushed to the babysitter's house as soon as he found out, and when he got there, he saw his daughter on the ground unconscious with a black eye. She was brought to a children's hospital where she had to have part of her skull removed to relieve the swelling in her brain. When the cops questioned the babysitter, she admitted that she was shaking the girl, which caused the girl to fall over onto concrete and be put in a coma. The little girl was left brain dead, and after 3 days, she was pronounced dead. The babysitter was charged with child endangerment and assault, but she pleaded not guilty and was let go free. This suspect in a wheelchair gets up and runs from the cop. A police officer was escorting a man in a wheelchair into court, when all of a sudden, the man in the wheelchair gets up and starts running. After searching for him for 3 hours, they finally found him and he faces even more charges. The weirdest laws that actually existed. In ancient Egypt, it was considered a crime to shave your beard. Only the pharaoh was allowed to have a clean-shaved face, since it was a symbol of his power and majesty. In Dunstable, England, it used to be illegal to beat a rug in the streets after 11 p.m. This law was put in place to prevent loud noises and let people sleep peacefully at night. And finally, in Alabama, it's illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church. This law was put in place to prevent people from disrupting religious services with funny disguises. 5 true facts that sound made up. In any random group of 23 people, there's more than a 50% chance that 2 of them have a birthday on the same day. With a group of 57 people, that probability goes to 99%. The shortest war in history, which was the Anglo-Zanzibar War, lasted a total of 38 minutes. There's actually a species of ant that only exists in New York, and it's called Manhattan ant. The apples you buy at a supermarket could be 1 year old. Most apples are picked, coated in wax, then sent to cold storage for several months before ending up in a store. The tongue of a blue whale weighs around the same weight as an entire elephant. The most funny Photoshop fails. This guy asked the editor if he could make the city more in focus. So he did make it more in focus, but he also blurred out the man. This lady asked if he could remove the railing. So he did, but he replaced it with a watering can. This guy asked if he could get his hand removed from his girlfriend's hip because he thought it looked funny. But instead of removing it, he added in another person. This girl said she loves the picture, but she's wondering if he could add some more green. So he did add some more green. And finally, this guy said he wore the wrong color tie and was wondering if he could make it black. So he just swapped the colors of the tuxedo and the tie. The weirdest things caught on security cameras. This guy was delivering pizza when something unexpected happened. Instead of a human opening the door, it was a monkey. As you can see, the delivery guy was shocked and he stepped back. But then the monkey handed over money to pay for the pizza, so he gave it to him and ran away.
Here's the only way to survive a plane crash. When booking your flight, try to get a seat in the exit row or within 5 seats from it. People in those seats have the highest survival rates. Wear pants and a long sleeve shirt made of non-flammable material like cotton or denim. And sturdy shoes. You want clothes that don't restrict movement but also protect you against flames and flying debris. Bring a smoke hood or a wet cloth in a plastic bag. Most people survive impact but die of smoke inhalation. If you don't have these, breathe through your clothes. When boarding the plane, count the seats between you and the nearest front and rear emergency exit. So if it gets smoky, you could feel your way to safety. When instructed, brace yourself by putting your feet on the ground, crossing your arms on the seat in front of you, and lowering your head. Remain that way until you come to a complete stop, then by crouching so you still get some air, leave the plane and get away as far as possible.
5 facts you didn't know about animals. Koala bear fingerprints are almost identical to human fingerprints. So much so that it's almost impossible to tell them apart. There are over 470 million dogs in the world. That's only 1 dog per 16 people. A group of owls is called a parliament. Frogs are able to freeze themselves without dying to endure cold temperatures. Then they can thaw themselves out when it becomes warm again. And finally, sloths poop only once a week, and it can take them up to 1 month to digest a single leaf. This is the story of the Hope Diamond, which ruined its owners' lives. The Diamond of Hope is a beautiful looking gem, but it's said to bring bad things to whoever that wears it. John Baptiste Tavernier was the first owner of this gem, but as soon as he got it, he had non-stop fevers that didn't go away until he sold it to King Louis of France. Then Louis decided to bring it to his jeweler and asked him if he could make it into a necklace that he could wear on special occasions. But a little while after the necklace was ready, he passed away due to not getting enough blood flow to the brain. The jewel was then passed on to his wife, who used to wear it every single day. But after the outbreak of the French Revolution, she was executed by the guillotine. Years later, the owner was Abdul Hamid II, who was a Turkish king, but his life changed for the worse shortly after he started wearing it. Due to the military revolution of the Young Turks, he was overthrown as king and spent his last days in prison. How do dreams actually work? Well, during the REM, or rapid eye movement stage of your sleep, your brain becomes more active and your body becomes paralyzed. And during this time is when you start dreaming. But where do dreams come from? Well, some scientists believe that dreams are a way for our brains to process stuff that happened during the day. Others think that dreams are a way for our brain to practice and prepare for future real-life situations. This waitress's random act of kindness changed her life. 18-year-old Yvonne Williams is working at a Waffle House in Texas trying to save money for college. But one day she noticed a customer struggling. An elderly man sitting in the corner was having trouble cutting his food, so Williams decided to stop during a busy shift and go cut the food for him. Another customer at the restaurant snapped the photo and posted it on Facebook. The picture went viral and the young lady became a local hero. The story caught the attention of the city's mayor, who surprised her at work by declaring an official Ebony Williams Day. The Texas Southern University also rewarded her with a $16,000 scholarship for her kindness.
Everyday items that prisons have banned and why. Gum has been banned for a few reasons, but one of them is because it can be used to jam the cell door's lock. So when a guard tries to lock it, it won't and the prisoner can get out. A lot of prisoners spend time drawing or writing on paper, and although that's allowed, they can have a notebook that has a spiral. You may think it's because it could be made into a weapon, which is true, but it could also be used to pick a lock. Finally, in lots of prisons, you're not allowed to have a hardback book, because they could be a good hiding place for a weapon, which has been done before, but another reason is because a big book like Harry Potter, for example, would hurt if someone was hit in the back of the head with it.
This lady sees a crying man forced to throw a package in the trash. One day, Evelise Hernandez was getting dropped off at the airport in Florida by her boyfriend. He decided to wait with her until she got through security, but they noticed the man in front of them was taking longer than usual. The security wasn't letting the man take one of his bags through. The couple couldn't see what was in the bag, but they figured it was something important because he was almost in tears. The security also wouldn't let him put it in the lost and found. They made him put the bag in the trash. Since Evelise's boyfriend wasn't going through security, he went to the trash can and got the bag. Inside was a snow globe with a little girl on it and a couple on the other side. Evelise posted about this on Facebook and it went viral. The shop that sold the snow globe saw the post and reached out to her with the name of the person who bought it. In the end, they were able to meet up with the person that bought it and return it to her.
5 places you should never swim. The boiling lake in Dominica is so dangerous that the magma underneath the surface makes the water so hot that you would be swimming in boiling water. Lake Karachay is one of the most toxic lakes on Earth, due to all the toxic waste that the Russian government introduced when toxic materials weren't as big of a problem. The Nile River is filled with crocodiles everywhere that could kill you, and if you manage to escape the crocodiles, you'll have snakes as a second problem. In the river and outside of it, you could probably find at least 15 venomous species. Jacob's Well is a lake located in Texas where you could dive really deep, but you have to be careful because there's caves below where people can get trapped. And lastly, Hanakape Beach has currents so strong that they even keep count of how many deaths there's been to scare people, and the number of people killed is 80.
This farmer found a possible alien egg, but then a scientist tells him the truth. On one Christmas day, Jose left his house to go on a morning walk. As he walked alongside a river, something strange caught his eye. On the edge of the river, surrounded by water and mud, was a huge gray object that looked like an egg. He rushed home to tell his family what he had found, and his wife laughed because she didn't believe him. He went back to show her, and even dug out the mud around it to see how big it actually was, and it ended up being over 3 feet long. He told the public about this, and everyone started creating rumors about what it was. But after a lot of research from scientists, they discovered that it was actually a shell. 15,000 years ago, glyptodons roamed the earth, and after the scientists did some studies on the shell, they came to the conclusion that that's what it was from. Here's what would happen if you ate a block of dry ice. As soon as it hits your tongue, it would start to tingle, then go numb. Also, you know how bad it feels when you bite on ice cream? Well, imagine that, but way worse. And after only a couple seconds, your mouth would be completely frozen. Now, as it goes down your throat, it would tingle a little, but then when it gets to your stomach, it would start to melt. And as we know, dry ice doesn't turn into a liquid, it turns into a gas, so your stomach would start to feel bloated. Your stomach lining would also be frozen in seconds. If you decided to keep keep eating blocks, your stomach would continue to expand until eventually it explodes. And if you didn't go to the hospital immediately, you wouldn't survive. Rules that presidents have to follow. Every single letter that they get in the mail, or an email, or even a phone call has to be approved by the Secret Service first. After becoming president, they will never be able to drive themselves again unless it's on private property, even if you're a former president. If they want to go somewhere, they'll either have to be driven by an escort or the Secret Service. They're also never allowed to be alone again. So if they want to go for a walk or go to the store to grab something quickly, the Secret Service will have to go with them. They will also get their own library, and in that library will be transcripts of everything they've ever said to the public. This man was selling pens to feed his child, and this photo changed their lives forever. Abdul was a single father and a Syrian refugee living in Lebanon. One day, he was selling pens while holding his daughter when a web developer saw them and decided to take a picture, then post it on Twitter. He shared the picture because he wanted to show a hardworking father trying to make money to take care of his family. The photo ended up going viral, so he started a fundraiser campaign to try and raise money for Abdul and his daughter. He was hoping to raise around $5,000, but after 24 hours of it being created, the campaign had made over $100,000 of donations. So far, Abdul has received 40% of the donations, and with that money, he was able to move into a larger apartment and send his child to school. They also helped 16 other Syrian refugees by giving them jobs at a kebab store and 2 bakeries that he was able to open with the money that was donated. The strangest Guinness World Records you've never heard of. The world's strangest diet belongs to a Frenchman who throughout his life ate a total of 18 bicycles, 15 grocery carts, 7 TVs, 6 chandeliers, 2 beds, a pair of skis, and a computer. The world's longest noodle was made in a restaurant in China and measured over 3,000 meters in length. A lab and research employee for Dr. Scholl's holds a record for the most armpits and feet sniffed. In 2019, the fastest time to push an orange 1 mile with their nose went to Arita Furman, who completed it in 22 minutes and 41 seconds. Finally, the longest attack of hiccups belongs to Charles Osborne, who got the hiccups in 1922 and had them for 68 years until the day he died. This is the world's smallest dog. Her name is Pearl, and she's a 2-year-old Chihuahua that lives in Central Florida. Pearl stands at 3.59 inches tall and weighs 1.2 pounds. She's shorter than a popsicle stick and around the same length as a $1 bill, and she can fit in the palm of your hand. Pearl was recently awarded the Guinness World Record for being the smallest and shortest dog in the world. She's a descendant of the previous world record holder, Miracle Millie, who is 3.8 inches tall, which is just 0.2 inches taller than Pearl. Pearl's owner describes her as a calm dog who likes to go for walks and play with her toys. She also said that Pearl loves the attraction she gets for being so tiny. Here's what cartoon characters would look like in real life. Daffy Duck from Looney Tunes, Daisy from Looney Tunes, Speedy Gonzales from Looney Tunes, Tiger from Winnie the Pooh, Chase from Paw Patrol, Bing Bong from Inside Out, Bruni from Frozen 2, Sandy from SpongeBob, Judy Hopps from Zootopia, Flounder from The Little Mermaid, Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb, and the cat from Alice in Wonderland. This picture is not Photoshop. Someone was just walking by the ocean when they saw a floating ship, so they took a picture. The reason it looks like it's floating is just because of the sky's reflection on the water. Jobs you didn't know existed. Ben Lashes is an internet famous cat manager. He manages famous cats like Grumpy Cat, Keyboard Cat, and Nyan Cat. He takes 20% of their earnings. So for an example, when Grumpy Cat made an estimated $1 million in her first year, he would have made $200,000 for just one client. Water slide testers travel from North America to places like Egypt to go to water parks and test their slides. They rate them based on the biggest splash and the adrenaline factor, then post their opinions online. Their yearly salary is $34,000. The China Giant Panda Protection and Research Center posted a job online called the Panda Nanny. You have to spend 365 days a year with a panda, but you get free meals and an SUV on top of the $32,000 salary. The only requirements are that you have to be 22 years or older and have basic knowledge of pandas. Here's how to survive a lionfish attack. First off, female lionfish have a lifespan of 15 years, and in that time, they can produce 2 million eggs. If you're in the water and you feel like you've been stung by a bee, then you've made contact with one. The venom specifically targets your nervous system, which is what makes you feel pain. So the first thing you'll want to do is obviously avoid them, but if you've been stung, then try and take out the spines. Next, wash the wound with soap and water, or take a hot bath because hot water breaks down the venom. The pain averagely lasts for 48 hours, so the best thing to do is get some rest. But in some cases, the pain can last for weeks, and if that happens, you should go to the doctor. Why squeezing your pimples
pimples is a bad idea. Our body always tells us when something's wrong. That's why when the pores of our skin become clogged and infected with bacteria, we get a red, lumpy, pus-filled pimple. Trying to make it go away faster by popping it is a terrible idea. The pressure you apply by squeezing your pimple will force the pus outwards, tearing your skin, creating a new wound that can easily turn into a scar. You're also likely to worsen the wound by adding new bacteria from your hands, because at least 150 types of bacteria are on your hands even when you think they're clean. Another thing that could happen is if you don't remove the entire pimple and accidentally push some dirt inside it, you can get an even bigger pimple and increase the chances of it being infected. If you have lots of acne, it's better to go to a specialist who knows how to treat them, and if you only have a bit, just wait for it to go away on its own.
No one in this city locks their doors, and you won't believe why. In Churchill, Manitoba, they're known for a large population of polar bears. Lots of times you'll see them walking around town, so everyone has gotten used to them. It's also a big attraction for tourists to come visit so that they could see them. But polar bears are one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. So they'll eat anything that they can get their paws on, including humans. So if someone is walking at night and they come across a polar bear, they need to find a place to escape to, which is why lots of people leave their car doors and house doors unlocked so people can get to safety. Smart tactics that police use when they pull you over. If the cop is suspicious of you, then they'll tap your rear tail light. By doing this, it may startle the driver and make them stop whatever they're doing. This also lets the officer see if the trunk is locked so no one can jump out and ambush them. But the main reason they do this is so that they can leave their fingerprint. So if anything bad happens to the cop, they can prove that the suspect made contact with them. This is the worst punishment in history. It doesn't physically harm you, but it does mentally. It's called the Chinese water torture. They tie up your arms and legs so you can't move, then they place a water bucket over your head, and at the bottom of the bucket there's a tiny hole that releases drops of water onto their forehead every few seconds. While it doesn't sound so bad, just imagine doing this for weeks non-stop.
Miracles people claim to have caught on tape. On Route 385 in Memphis, Tennessee, a driver lost control of his Jeep and went off the road. The car was immediately engulfed with flames. The driver escaped unharmed, but the curious thing is the police found a Bible that was untouched by the fire. It was perfectly fine even though the car was almost in ashes. In the Philippines, a little girl woke up at her funeral. Apparently she was ill and had a high fever which caused her to go into a coma. But the doctors didn't know that and declared her dead the day before her funeral. But luckily her relatives found out in time. Prahlad Yani was a Hindu ascetic who claimed he hadn't eaten or drank anything in over 70 years. Specialists in the scientific department put him in hospital for 15 days under 24-hour supervision and claimed he hadn't eaten or drank anything in those 15 days. According to the man, this can be achieved by meditation and a divine blessing. This man hasn't showered in over 60 years. His name is Amu Haji, and he lives by himself in an Iranian desert. He said the reason he hasn't bathed in over 60 years is because a woman broke his heart. He's a strong believer that cleanliness causes illness. He doesn't like fresh food or clean dishes. The water he drinks is from a rusty oil can, and his favorite food is rotten porcupine meat. He also smokes his handmade pipe with animal feces instead of tobacco. He either dresses in rags or old dirty clothes. In the winter he wears a war helmet to keep his head warm, and he trims his hair every once in a while by burning it with fire. Finally, he sleeps in two places, a hole in the ground or a brick hut.
Here's what happens when a mosquito bites you. Believe it or not only are mosquitoes really annoying, but they kill almost 1 million people every year. When a mosquito lands on you, it will spit its saliva onto your skin, which numbs it. Then it sticks its 6 tiny sharp needles into you and it looks for a blood vessel. Once it finds a blood vessel, it will once again shoot out saliva. This lets your blood flow into its body, but also protects you from getting blood clots. Then after it flies away or you squash it, you'll be left with a red itchy bump. And this is caused by an immune response from your body to the saliva. Strict rules Kim Jong-un makes his wife follow. She had to change her name to Ri Sol-ju to avoid being associated with one of her family members. Her date of birth and other documents are hidden. She had to hide while she was pregnant. She's only allowed to go out in public if her husband is there. Her past as a singer and a cheerleader had to be eliminated. So that means 9 musicians in the orchestra that she sang in had to be executed to prevent information about her life being leaked. She has to allow her husband to be with other women. She's not allowed to get a divorce if they're not getting along or if there's domestic violence. She can't travel outside of North Korea unless it's strictly necessary. She can't visit her family. And lastly, she doesn't really have a choice of what she wears and how she does her hair.
Photos you'll have to look at twice. At first it looks like a girl making a weird face, but she's actually sleeping and that's just a magazine. This lady giving a speech looks like she's floating on a magic carpet, but the shadow is just from a flag. It looks like this boy playing soccer has a ponytail, but it's actually the hair from someone behind him. It looks like this dog is cut in half, but it's actually just laying beside a log. It looks like this girl
girl's kissing a boy with a big head, but the person she's kissing is actually behind him. Crazy ideas that actually worked. In some parts of the world, sunlight doesn't always reach, especially in the winter. So an engineer and an architect placed a giant mirror on the side of the mountain to reflect the sunlight. Alex too, who was a British student, needed money to pay for college. So he created a website with 1 million blank pixels, each one costing $1. On the website, companies could buy a pixel to place their logo and a link to their website. It was really successful, and in no time, Alex earned $1 million. In 2015, scientists discovered that due to the sun, a city's drinking water reservoir was evaporating and had increased levels of bromate, which is from the sun hitting the water and can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. So the solution was simple. They covered the water with millions of non-toxic plastic balls, which gave shade to the water and fixed both problems.
People who survived the impossible. On April 5th, 2015, Victoria Sealiers went parachuting. She had gone many times before, so she had lots of experience. But her husband, Emil, sabotaged her parachute without her knowing. She fell 4,000 feet before hitting the ground going 60 miles per hour. In most cases, that would be fatal, but luckily, she hit a soft part of the field that had just been plowed. So she ended up surviving but was badly injured. The police later found out that her husband was seeing 2 other ladies, and he had promised one of them that he would leave his wife and take her life insurance money for the 2 of them after her death. They also found out that he had tried to murder her a week before they went parachuting as well. He opened a gas valve in the kitchen while she was sleeping, then went to his ex-wife's house to sleep. Luckily, she woke up and smelled the gas in time to prevent anything bad from happening. Her husband, Emil, was then sentenced to life in prison.
Here's how to survive a dog attack. First, you need to stay calm and still. The reason dogs attack is because they're afraid, and they've learned that offense is their best defense. So if you yell or make lots of motion, you'll cause their fear to increase and they'll be more aggressive. The second thing is to avoid eye contact. When you stare, it scares them, and again causes them to be more aggressive. The third thing is to avoid running because it'll trigger them to chase you. Now if you think it's gonna bite you, put a purse, jacket, or any object in between you and the dog. Then use it as a shield to prevent it from getting close to you. But if the bite's unavoidable, defend yourself with one of your forearms, and use your other arm to protect your face, throat, and stomach. Once the dog is calmed down, slowly back away without turning around. And finally, after the attack, go to the emergency room to check your injuries.
This is the longest whip ever crafted. The harshest punishments for the smallest crimes, Part 1. After the death of Kimber Reynolds in 1992, her father was mad that one of the men involved in her death, who was also a lifelong criminal, was only sentenced to 9 years in prison. So he decided to help the state of California create a 3-strike rule, meaning the second time someone goes to prison, they're sentenced to 2 times the amount of years as their first time in prison. And if they go to prison for a 3rd time, then they're sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. This is to try and stop criminals from committing more crimes. But in 1995, Jerry Williams was sentenced to life in prison because he had previous convictions. And what he did this time was steal a piece of pizza from a kid at the beach. This is the youngest person ever sentenced to death in the world. His name is George Steiny Jr., and he was just 14 when he was executed. He was accused of killing 2 girls who were 11 and 7 years old, because the girls' bodies were found outside of him and his parents' house. The trial lasted for 2 hours, and the whole time he kept claiming that he didn't do it. But only 10 minutes after it was over, they came to the conclusion that he was guilty. He spent the next 81 days in prison without being able to see his parents, and then he was executed on the electric chair. But almost 70 years later, a judge from South Carolina proved that he was actually innocent.
This is the smartest scam in history, and you won't believe how he did it. A con artist decided he wanted to build a skyscraper in Texas. On the blueprint, he put it was going to be 480 tall. He didn't specify whether it was 480 centimeters, inches, or feet. So the investors just assumed that he meant 480 feet tall and invested $200,000, which is around $3 million today. He did make the skyscraper, but it was only 4 stories high and 480 inches tall. Then he kept the rest of the money for himself. The investors decided to bring him to court, but the judge decided that the investors got exactly what they signed for and the man got to keep the money. 3 actors who actually got injured in movies. In Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise had a scene where he jumped from building to building. He slams into the building, then pulls himself up in pain and slowly limps away. This is because when he hit the building, he actually broke his ankle. In The Exorcist, there's a scene where the possessed girl slaps her mom across the room, causing her to yell. To film this scene, there were people who pulled the actor onto her back using wires, but they pulled too hard and left her with lifelong back pain. Finally, in a scene for the movie Apocalypse Now, the actor had to pretend like he was drunk, but he thought it would be more realistic if he was actually drunk, so that's what what they did. And because he wasn't thinking right, he punched a mirror, causing it to break and cut his hand. But he kept going and they used it in the final cut. Athletes who were caught cheating. In 2012, it was confirmed that cyclist Lance Armstrong had used drugs throughout his career to enhance his performance. He received a lifetime ban and got his 7 Tour de France victories taken away. Tom Brady demanded that the balls being used in a game between the Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts were to be slightly inflated to gain an advantage. Although they won 45-7, Brady was fined $4 million and banned for 4 games. Ben Johnson cheated to win the 100-meter dash in the 1988 Olympics. A prohibited anabolic steroid was detected in his samples, for which he was banned for 2 years. A few years later, he tested positive again and was banned for life. Finally, in the 1986 World Cup, in a game between Argentina and England, Diego Maradona scored a goal with his hand, and the referee counted it despite the evidence. Photos you're not supposed to see. Did you know big lighters are just made out of small lighters? This is what a bathroom without any stalls looks like. This is what paint looks like before you stir it. Here's what the inside of a pool table looks like. And here's what the inside of a gas pump looks like.
This small glass drop is indestructible. Well, kind of. It's called Prince Rupert's drop and it was discovered 400 years ago. To make it, all you do is melt the glass rod, then let a piece fall off into water. Then the cool thing about it is when you hit it with a hammer, it doesn't break, but if you cut the tail, it shatters into 1,000,000 pieces. These inspectors found 110 violations at a restaurant called China Buffet. When the interviewers got there, they found steak lying on the ground, and the sink where they cleaned dishes looked like this. Just a few things that the inspectors found were 6 live roaches near a food prep table, a bunch of different meats laying out and not in the freezer, the dishwasher wasn't sanitizing, there was mold everywhere, an employee was smoking in the food prep area, a bathroom in the kitchen had sewage all over the floor which made the whole place stink, and that's just 6 of the 110 violations. When they asked the restaurant owner a few questions, this is what he had to say.
No cameras. No cameras what? First of all, don't touch. First of all, don't touch the camera.
Don't touch the camera.
Talk to my attorney. Don't
touch my camera. Don't touch my camera.
Secrets that carnivals don't want you to know. If you've ever tried playing the basketball game at a carnival, you know that it's really hard to make a shot. And this is because the hoops aren't actually round, they're shaped as an oval to make it harder for you to get it in. Also higher than the regulation height. And they also sometimes inflate the ball more than they're supposed to make it bigger and harder to get in. In the game where you throw darts to try and pop the balloons, they deflate the balloons a lot, making them smaller and harder to hit, but also if you do hit them, less likely to pop. On top of that, the darts aren't as sharp as professional ones. They have a dull edge to them. These customers bought out a donut store so the owner can take care of his sick wife. This is what the store looked like at 5 in the morning. The line was already going out the door. All of the customers are there to show their support by buying as many donuts as they can so the owner can leave early to take care of his wife who's recovering from a brain aneurysm.
I bought 3 dozen. Yeah, I came in the other day and bought 300.
When this lady named Jonah got there, all of the donuts were sold out and it was only 7 in the morning. But instead of being mad, she was really happy. Because growing up, she also had a family business. So she was happy that people were there to show support for a local business. In 2018, these 2 friends were walking on the sidewalk when one friend decided to push the other, not realizing that she would fall over and almost get hit by a bus. These are the most terrifying close calls caught on camera, and let's continue. This boy was outside during a storm playing in the rain when all of a sudden lightning struck the fence behind him, but the boy was luckily unharmed. In 2015, a couple were riding on a motorcycle when it was pouring rain. It was raining so much that there were big puddles in the middle of the road. As the man started to speed up, he lost control and they fell off. The man grabbed the lady to protect her until they came to a full stop. They then realized that her helmet was way too big, and luckily there was no oncoming traffic at this time.
The Power of Time Part 2. This guy's mom gave him and his brother the exact same teddy bear when they were born, but you could tell which one had more love. These indents in the carpet are from this person's cat walking the exact same path every single day. These 3 knives have been used so much at this person's work that they're almost gone. This is someone's carpet after moving their bed for the first time in 60 years. Here's this person's sun damage after being a delivery truck driver for 28 years. Here's what the floor of a bank looks like after years of people standing in the same spot. Now before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that lets you create your own fonts to use as your keyboard. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Here's the difference in stairs built in 1829 versus 2005. This sad story might make you cry. A lady wanted a ring, but the guy gave her a teddy bear instead. The lady was frustrated, so she threw the teddy bear onto the road. The guy went to go get it, but he was hit by a coming car and died. At his funeral, the lady was hugging the bear and she heard a machine inside it say, "Will you marry me?" She then opened it up and found a ring inside. Here's how to become the world's first trillionaire. The competition to be the richest person in the world right now has been in between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But this could change in the future because of an industry that hasn't yet been started, which is asteroid mining. Gold, silver, palladium, platinum, and much more can be extracted from asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. For example, the asteroid 16 Psyche has enough supply of ferronickel for the whole world to last for millions of years. The person who starts this industry will make money like never seen before without even traveling that far, because there's valuable asteroids close to Earth, like the 162,173 Ryugu, which is estimated at $83 billion. So far, no one's been able to pull it off because taking things to space is really expensive. And the most important question is, how are they going to extract the metals from the asteroids?
3 revolutionary products you need to know about. The Life Straw is what it sounds like. It's a straw that can save your life. It contains a filter that can get rid of 99.99% of germs and parasites. So if you're out in the wilderness and you have no water, just pull out the straw and start sucking whatever water you can find. The next item is called a SwitchBot, and I actually have one. Basically, you can put these on whatever you want, but the most common thing is a light switch. Then you can use your phone or your voice to switch it on. It also comes with an attachment so you can turn certain things off too, like a light switch. Finally, we have this alarm clock, but it's not an ordinary alarm clock. It has wheels. And what it does is when it goes off, it starts running around your room making noises, which forces you to get out of bed so you can shut it off.
The luckiest things found in storage units. A homeless couple looking for a couch bought a storage unit that had an old couch and a teddy bear for $10 because nobody else wanted it. But when they checked inside the bear, they found $300,000 in cash. A man from Long Island found a sports car in a storage unit that cost him $100. But that's not all. The car was from a James Bond movie and Elon Musk offered him $1 million for it. A couple who bought a storage unit found a 16th century pirate treasure chest. The chest was full of Spanish coins and the whole thing sold for $500,000. An art enthusiast bid $15,000 for some paintings to resell. Among the pile of 200 paintings, 5 of them were masterpieces that had been lost and they were worth $2.5 million. Here's how a vending machine actually works. When you place a coin in the machine, light sensors determine the size and electromagnets detect the metal type to identify the coins, then sort them into columns. And if it's a fake, it goes into the reject chute. When it needs to give change, it releases one coin carefully at a time into the chute. When you press a key, a computer orders one of the 32 motors to turn the spiral 360 degrees. Then as the snack falls, it hits a line of 10 infrared beams. If nothing crosses the beams, then the computer orders the coils to turn another 360 degrees until something does. The homeless teen who invented Disney. From an early age, Walter Disney showed interest in drawing. And in 1919, he got a job as an apprentice at a commercial art studio. While he was there, he met a friend and together they opened a drawing business called Disney Eyeworks. But unfortunately, they didn't get any customers. So he decided to start a new business called Laugh-O-Gram Films, but again, had no luck. Because of this, he became homeless and with only $40 in his pocket, he moved to Hollywood. Universal Pictures hired him to create an animated series called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. The character was a hit, but Universal kept the rights to the rabbit, leaving Walt out of the picture. A little while later, he created a short film with the financial help of Pat Powers. In that film, he included a character that would become one of the most famous cartoons in the world, Mickey Mouse. But eventually, Powers stopped financing it and Walt went into depression. But soon after, Joseph Schenck encouraged him to animate with color, which resulted in the film Snow White, released in 1937. Today, Walt Disney Studios is one of the most successful companies in the world, with an estimated value of $130 billion.
These stick figures aren't moving. Well, actually, I kinda lied. This one's legs are moving, but the other ones aren't moving. But they look like they're moving because of the changing colors.
5 people who won the food lottery, part 7. This person grew braided carrots in their garden. This person ordered a McDouble from McDonald's and got 3 patties instead of 2. This person got 4 Reese's peanut butter cups in a pack of 3. This person got a clump of cinnamon in their cereal, and this person got a giant clump of Flamin' Hot seasoning.
3 animals that you'll be glad are extinct. First off, we have the Gigantopithecus blackie, which is the largest ape that ever lived. It was almost 10 foot tall and weighed over 1,100 pounds. It also walked on its fists. But surprisingly, it didn't eat meat, but would still protect itself from its predators, which included tigers, leopards, and bears. The Beelzebuffoampinga was a large frog that was 40 centimeters tall and weighed almost 10 pounds. Instead of eating flies and small bugs, it would lie hidden until lizards or young dinosaurs approached, then it would snap them up with their enormous jaws. And lastly, we have the Brontosaurus burmisteri, which was the largest carnivorous bird ever at 10 feet tall, also weighing around 1,000 pounds with massive claws. It was also as quick as a cheetah, and its kick was hard enough to shatter a bone.
This boy lived in a bubble for 18 years. Jimmy Livingston was born with no immunity, so he had to be kept isolated. His parents made him a plastic bubble that he couldn't get out of, and they could only touch him with gloves. When he was 16, he was attracted to his neighbor Chloe, who he could see through his window. When his overprotected mom found out about this, she warned him that if he touched her, he would die. As the years went on, Jimmy and Chloe became friends. Until one day, Chloe gave him news that left him really sad. She would be leaving soon to marry her fiancé at Niagara Falls. Since Jimmy was in love with her, he decided to make a suit, so he could go outside and interrupt the wedding. A few days later, he arrived just in time to interrupt the wedding. Then he confessed his love for Chloe and got out of the suit and kissed her. His mother arrived just in time to see him and told everybody the truth. Jimmy was perfectly fine. She was just holding him captive to keep him away from the rest of the world. In the end, Jimmy forgives his mother and ends up marrying Chloe. This man is a hero and you won't believe what Elon Musk did for him. Manfred Kick was driving his Tesla when he noticed a vehicle in front of him kept hitting the rail on the side of the road. He decided to pass them because he figured it was dangerous being behind them. But when he was passing, he noticed the driver was unconscious. He decided to pull in front of the vehicle and slow down so the vehicle would hit the back of his car, then kept slowing down until both vehicles came to a stop. Because he decided to do this, the back of his Tesla got damaged. Now before I tell you what Elon Musk did, if you've ever wondered how to get these secret emojis and some cool fonts to impress your friends, then press the link in the comments to get the app. In appreciation to the man saving the person's life, Elon Musk repaired his vehicle for free.
This teacher promised her students a treat if she made an impossible shot. This 3rd grade teacher, Kathleen Fitzpatrick, or as her students at Holy Trinity School in Washington, D.C. call her, Miss Fitz. On one Friday afternoon during recess, Miss Fitz was playing basketball with her students, and she decided to make them a bet. If she can make a shot, she'll bring in hot chocolate for the whole class on Monday. Miss Fitz then takes a few dribbles as her students cheer her on. She then launches up a Hail Mary shot, and boom, the kids go nuts. It turns out Miss Fitz actually played college basketball, and once hit a 3-point buzzer beater to win the game. But I bet this shot for hot cocoa felt even better. Here's 3 short riddles that I bet you can't get right. What has to be broken before it can be used? I'm gonna give you 3 seconds for each riddle, but if you need more time, just press the screen to pause it. The answer is an egg. Number 2, I'm tall when I'm young, but I'm short when I'm old. What am I? The answer is a candle. And lastly, what month of the year has 28 days? You might have guessed February, but they all have 28 days, some just have more.
Chilling last photos before they went missing. Andrew McCauley's last photo was a self-portrait taken while he was alone in his kayak in the middle of the ocean. At the age of 39, he set out on a journey to be the first person to kayak from Australia to New Zealand. Unfortunately, even though he prepared for 10 years, he was unable to make it. His kayak and camera were found, but there was no trace of him. He was most likely capsized from a wave separating him from his kayak and ended up dying from hypothermia in the middle of the ocean. Chris Creamers and Lisanne Froon. In this photo, they're both smiling at the camera with the mountains of El Pionista Trail in the background. On April 1st, 2014, they were preparing to go on the trail. After the trail, the family that was hosting was concerned because they hadn't returned, so they looked around but they couldn't find them. Days later, on the same trail, they found parts of their decomposed bodies. They think they had a fatal accident, but to this day, their deaths remain a mystery.
Genius inventions that still only exist in Japan. So you know how usually you would just put your wallet in your pants pocket, right? Well, in Japan, they make ties with pockets so you don't have to carry a wallet and you can put everything that you put in your wallet in the tie. It's common to find vending machines all over Japan with random things for sale, like video games and magazines all the way to underwear, but the funniest part is, it's really hard to find one that sells chips or chocolate bars. Diagonal crosswalks were designed to make it faster to get to where you're going, but if you're a driver on the other hand, it probably makes it slower because you're gonna have to wait longer. This is called a silent karaoke microphone. It lets you listen to your favorite songs and sing along to them without anybody else hearing you.
Pictures you're not supposed to see. Here's what an owl looks like without any feathers. This is what tiger skin looks like. Here's a human heart without any blood. This is what the bottom of a fire hydrant looks like. Here's the inside of a turtle's mouth. Here's the inside of a bowling ball, and here's the inside of a dice.
These are the most expensive mistakes. If this first one wasn't caught on camera, I don't think anyone would have believed him. This person just wanted to get a Coca-Cola for $2.75, but the vending machine glitched, charging him $280, and he didn't even get a drink. And finally, we have this guy who was happy about getting his brand new 65-inch TV until this happened. Now, I have no idea why this person was recording, because if they would have just helped, I don't think this would have happened.
Dark secrets that zoos don't want you to know. Zoo pens are a possible source of salmonella, E. coli, and many other diseases, so be careful when touching the animals. Some animals can suffer from zoonosis, which they get from being held in a zoo that causes them to tick, groom excessively, and make them anxious. And to control it, they give them medication. When zoos have too many animals in very little space, they give them pills to prevent them from having babies, or they sacrifice them at birth. The food given to animals isn't always the best. In many cases, they're given processed foods, and animals like tigers who only eat meat develop dental problems and become anxious because they can't hunt. Finally, it's 50 times more expensive to keep an elephant in a zoo than to let it run free. Secrets movie theaters don't want you to know. Movie theaters earn very little from ticket sales. That's why they decided to lower the cost of tickets and raise the cost of food, so the earnings would go entirely to the movie theater. Food combos won't always save you money. Sometimes it's just a strategy to make you think it's the best option. So next time, check if it's better to buy a combo or buy the food separately. Sometimes there's people yelling at the cabin for the movie to start, but what they don't know is that that the cabin is completely empty. Thanks to new technology, human assistance isn't needed. Movies will never start at the time the ticket says it will. This way they'll get more people to watch the ads before the movie. And if you ever thought you were cool sneaking into another movie than the one that you bought, the employees don't really care as long as there are seats available. She didn't know she had cancer until she was on live television. Nicole McGinnis wanted a house near the beach. She even went on the TV show called Beach House Bargain Hunt. On the show, she looked happy about the house hunt with her dad. But if you look at her closely, you could see a small bump on her throat. Dr. Eric Voigt was watching the show at home. He's an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. He said that he felt obligated to let her know that she had something in case she didn't already know. Because as an expert in the field, he felt concerned for her. He used social media to try and reach out to her, and it ended up getting back to her family. She immediately went to the doctor and was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. She got to meet the doctor who reached out to her, and as of December 24th, 2020, she reached the 5-year mark since her cancer was removed.
This guy had brain surgery while playing the guitar. Robert Alvarez loves playing the guitar, but one day he had to have surgery to get a brain tumor removed, and there was a chance that he would forget how to do some things. So the doctor asked him if he wanted to play his guitar during his surgery, because it would minimize the risk of impairing brain function like movement and speech. But for Robert, his ability to play the guitar was just as important to him. At first, he was a little hesitant because he liked to play heavy metal music, and he didn't know how the surgeons would feel about him playing that type of music. But he decided to go ahead with it, and he played Creep by Radiohead, which is one of the only songs he knew that wasn't heavy metal.
The answers to 3 questions about planes you've always wanted to ask. Why don't they have the same seatbelts as cars? For shoulder straps to work, it has to be attached to something sturdy like a car frame. And airplane walls aren't equipped for that. If they were, it would make the plane heavier, making it burn more fuel. Plane seatbelts have lift lever buckles, making it stronger, and so you can't accidentally open it. Why do planes have red and green lights on their wings? The red light is always on the left wing and the green light is always on the right wing. This way other pilots in traffic control can tell which way the plane is flying. The 2 different colors also make it less likely for the plane to be confused with something like a drone. Why are the windows round? Rounded corners help distribute stress, reducing the chance of it breaking. Square windows are dangerous because the sharp angles are easy to crack because of air pressure.
5 genius solutions to problems. This shopping cart has a place for kids to stand while their parents can still push it. This bench has a solar panel for an umbrella so it blocks the shade, but also so you could plug in your phone to charge it. This is for boxes that have fragile items in them that aren't supposed to be tipped over. So if the box flips over during delivery, the blue beads will go into the triangle. This ruler has a raised edge so it's easier to pick it up. And finally, at this hotel in Iceland, the phone has a button that you can press to be woken up when there's northern lights.
1 in a million coincidences. This bird landed on the page about itself. This guy's t-shirt, race number, and finishing time were all the same number. A dog gave birth to these 3 puppies, each with their own corresponding number on their back. These 2 strangers sat next to each other at a bar and spelled Cookie Monster. And this person managed to take a picture at the exact same time as the balloon was popping.
This Kung Fu master appeared on a TV show in Hawaii. He showed how he could break concrete blocks with a glass. But when the show host went to the next block, he wanted to show the audience how hard the bricks were. But he accidentally broke it by tapping on it because he thought it was made out of a harder material. These are people who expose themselves on live TV. Let's continue. The show Inside Edition wanted to catch a fraud who said that she could read minds. So they invited her onto the show to try and solve an unsolved case. Then the man showed her a picture of a girl and he said it was his missing sister. The lady then charged him $400 and after said that the girl in the picture is no longer alive. Right after this, Inside Edition's host exposed her by saying the girl in the picture was actually her when she was younger. Peter Popoff claimed to take away people's illnesses. He would have a large crowd, then call out a random person and tell them their name and what was affecting them. But one time, someone brought in a radio scanner and discovered that he actually had a small earpiece in his ear. His wife would talk to him through it and tell him the name, address, and illness of his audience members. He was called out about this on The Tonight Show, and after that, he went bankrupt. The worst jobs to ever exist. The first is a medieval executioner. Their job was to give the death penalty on people, and it was often by hanging them or taking off their heads. But they also often lived in poverty and were at risk of being attacked from angry mobs. The second job is a coal miner in the 19th century and early 20th century. They worked in dark, dangerous, tight spaces with a high risk of death or injury due to cave-ins, explosions, and respiratory illnesses due to cave-ins, explosions, and respiratory diseases from inhaling coal. The last job is a human sanitation worker in ancient Rome. They were in charge of cleaning the city's streets, which were always covered in sewage. They also had to deal with unpleasant tasks like removing bodies from animals and humans if they passed away in the streets. This is the most cool thing you'll see all day. All you have to do is stare at the plus sign in the middle of this Batman logo. And don't worry, if you need to blink, that's okay, but just don't look away. Just a few more seconds, trust me, this will be worth it. This will be the deadliest thing you'll see all day. And also, don't laugh or else it won't work. I'm only joking. You see what I did there? It's the Batman logo and I did the Joker laugh. All right, now what I want you guys to do is look at the wall and start blinking. You should be able to see the Batman logo still. And if you do, make sure to destroy that like button.
5 dream signs you shouldn't ignore. Falling. This means you're overwhelmed and out of control in a situation in your life. Being chased. This means you're avoiding an issue or a person in real life. Flying. This means you're ready to take a bold decision in life. Lost. This means you feel out of place or you're going the wrong direction in life. And finally, being naked in public means you have the fear of being judged.
I bet you can't get the right answer to this simple question. A bat and a ball cost a total of $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. So how much does the ball cost? I'm gonna say the answer, so if you want some time to think, just pause the video. You probably answered 10 cents, and that's what most people guess. But the real answer is 5 cents. Because if the ball was 10 cents, $1 more than 10 cents is $1.10. And 10 cents plus $1.10 equals $1.20. But if the ball is 5 cents, which is the actual answer, then $1 more than 5 cents is $1.05, which equals $1.10 as the total. You were today's years old when you found this out. You know when you're in the water for a long time and your fingers get wrinkly? Well, they actually do this so you have a better grip underwater. When you snap your fingers, the sound actually comes from your finger hitting your palm and not your fingers rubbing together. Oh, you don't believe me? It's okay, you can put your hands down. Gandalf from Lord of the Rings carried his pipe inside of his staff. The ST in first, the ND in second, and the RD in third is because those are the last 2 letters of each word. Calling someone a dime means they're a 10 because that's how many cents it's worth. The Hollywood sign used to say Hollywood Land. And finally, Nintendo DS was short for Nintendo Dual Screen.
This is the worst form of torture. White room torture is when a prisoner is locked up in a soundproof room that's completely white. The walls are white, their clothes are white, and all they could eat is white rice on a white plate. If they have to go to the bathroom, they slip a white piece of paper under the door. Then a guard with padded shoes opens another door with a white bathroom. After months or even years in the room, the prisoner would start to have hallucinations. They then start to forget everything, including who they are and what their parents look like. This man faked a 2-year coma to avoid going to court, and you won't believe how he got caught. His name is Alan, and he stole $60,000 from his 86-year-old neighbor. As soon as the cops started to investigate, that's when he decided to fake an injury. He said a garage door fell on his back, which paralyzed him from his neck down. He went to the doctors, and even though they said there was nothing wrong with him and they couldn't see anything, he kept going back. He kept doing this for 2 years, and whenever the police came to talk to him, he hopped in a medical bed and would pretend he's in a coma at his house. But 2 years later, he got caught shopping on a security camera when he was supposed to be in a coma. He was then sentenced to 14 months in prison.
The luckiest moments ever caught on camera. When this man was walking on the sidewalk, he thought he stepped on something, so he stopped to take a look at his shoe. And good thing he did, because only a couple seconds later, a giant pane of glass fell inches from his head. Luckily, he was unharmed, but if he didn't stop to take a look at his shoe, he might have got hit. This lady was sitting outside by her pool and talking to her son when you can hear a tree start to crack, so the boy yells at his mom to run and she jumped into action. This man was standing way too close to the train tracks and he didn't know that a train was coming. But luckily at the last second he turned around and saw it, so he jumped out of the way.
The most uncomfortable products ever designed. Number 1, this child car seat. In order to help parents keep their children quiet in car seats, a designer came up with the idea to paint Disney's Princess Cinderella on it. It looks good when there's a small child sitting in it, but as they get older, you'll have to adjust the headrest, and to do that, you have to stretch Cinderella's neck. Number 2, these Kleenex tissues. We all know the typical Spider-Man pose, and someone decided to put that on a Kleenex box, and whoever designed it didn't think it through, because they put the image in a way where it looks like you're pulling tissues from Spider-Man's bum. Number 3, Wonder Woman scissors. The scissors have a good design when they're closed, but when opened it looks like you're splitting Wonder Woman in 2. And finally, number 4, the red ribbon. In a children's hospital, they painted a pathway that's supposed to look like a red ribbon, but instead it looked like a path left by someone dragging a bloody body.
This cop found a missing boy because he plays video games. One Saturday night, a 911 call was made reporting a missing boy. Gary Strebel was the officer assigned, so he drove to the house to look for clues. When he was looking in the boy's bedroom, he found a laptop that was left open. He also saw that Discord was left open on it, and if you don't know what that is, it's an app that lets you voice chat and text while playing video games with other people. Luckily, the officer had been playing video games since he was just a little boy, and he uses Discord when he's not at work. He decided to open his personal Discord and send a friend request to the missing boy. He figured that if the boy had the Discord app downloaded on his phone, he could trick him into answering. He also noticed that the boy had just been texting with other people on Discord, and within a few minutes, he responded. The man said right away that he was an officer, but the boy didn't believe it since he was using Discord. Discord. But then he explained that he's just a normal guy who likes to play video games when he's not at work. He didn't hear back from the boy, so he thought his plan had failed, but then he responded. He said, "Okay, I'll take your word for it and come back home." About an hour later, he returned back home and he wasn't hurt.
Sneaky ways airports get you to spend more money. The first thing they do is put the parking ticket at a high price. It's cheaper if you park at a nearby hotel or get a ride by a bus or cab. They also ask you to arrive early to avoid missing your flight. So after checking in and going through security, you'll feel relieved and ready to wait for boarding. And you'll also have plenty of free time to shop. Airports take advantage of this by placing lots of stores in your way, like coffee shops, convenience stores, and restaurants. Most commonly, more stores will be on your right, because most people are right-handed and they tend to look that way more often. Finally, you'll find eye-catching and spacious stores to attract your attention, so you can walk right through with your luggage, while restaurants and cafes will have a quiet atmosphere to make you feel more comfortable and spend more money. This is the creepiest McDonald's in the world. In 1986, this McDonald's opened for the World Expo in Canada. Because of its location and cool features, it was placed ahead of the competition. It had real plants, wooden floors, and art covering the walls. Instead of you being able to see the kitchen like in regular McDonald's, the creators hid it. And to get the food to customers, they place it on a conveyor belt. Millions of people from around the world ate there because it was a must-see tourist attraction. At the end of the expo, it was closed and abandoned for years. Now it looks like this.